Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Met His Soulmate Tenten Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. She waited outside of the door to the hospital room and stood rigid, concentrating on trying to sense if its occupants were awake, or aware of her presence there. It's rude to spy on people, called one of the room's occupants, her cousin. Stiffening even further at the prospect of being thought of as rude, Hanabi entered her sister's hospital room, finding that there was only her sister, her cousin, and herself. Hinata Ne-chan, Neji-san, greeted Hanabi as she sat down into one of the hospital chairs. Hanabi-sama greeted Neji just as dispassionately as his younger cousin as he held his wife's hand. Konnichiwa Hanabi-chan, how was your first day as a full-fledged ninja? Questioned Hinata as she cradled the sleeping Lee in her arms. It was informative, answered Hanabi, trying to find the exact word to describe her training. Who are your teammates? Asked Neji bluntly, causing Hanabi to slightly scowl. She never could understand how Hinata could treat her cousin so kindly despite his antagonistic disposition. Inuzuka Hige and Satake Kazuki, answered Hanabi. Inuzuka has the potential to become one of the greatest assets of our team, while Satake is more of a liability than anything, analyzed Hanabi, not failing to notice Neji stiffen after hearing the identities of her teammates. Is something wrong, Neji-san? No, nothing's wrong, Hanabi-sama, but you neglected to mention the identity of your squad leader, answered Neji. Yes, my sensei, started out Hanabi, trying to think of how to describe her sensei. Well, he's very idiosyncratic. I can't say that I've met anyone even remotely similar to him before. Overall, however, he's an enigma. He acts like an idiot sometimes, but he's a ninja of excellent caliber, besting all three of us with hardly a scratch on him. Truth be told, I'd be afraid to face him in battle, evaluated Hanabi slowly, and then nodded with the satisfaction of her words. She then became confused when she saw Hinata stifling a laugh and Neji, the Hyuga Neji, grinning slightly. So Uzumaki Naruto-san is your sensei? Asked Neji. Yes, he is, confirmed Hanabi, not even bothering to ask how her cousin knew. He always just did, and by now she had just accepted that fact. But what is the real reason you came here, Hanabi-sama? Asked Neji as he folded his arms over each other. Damn, how does he know me so well? Thought Hanabi. Because we're both Hyuga, said Neji. Hanabi slightly twitched out of annoyance. I have a question about Naruto-sensei, stated Hanabi, fully regaining her composure. Go ahead, Neji prompted. Ne-san, this time Hanabi was careful to direct her question towards her sister, who is Uzumaki Naruto. What do you mean? Asked Hinata, trying to act clueless, but Hanabi knew her sister too well and instantly saw that information was being withheld from her. Uzumaki Naruto is not normal. First of all, the odd birthmarks on his cheeks aren't natural, it's obvious. Second, when he was administering the bell test, I sensed dual chakra coils, which I've never seen before. And third of all, he doesn't act normally. I can't place it exactly, but I know that Naruto-sensei is not ordinary, Hanabi stated. You're right, Hanabi, but that is something you will have to figure out on your own, answered Hinata. I understand, Oni-san. You should check up on Naruto-sensei and Tenten-san though, said Hanabi as she got up from her chair and was about to leave the room, but was stopped by her cousin grasping her shoulder. Hanabi's first reaction was to activate the cursed seal on Neji's forehead, but she was able to restrain herself, if only for the sake of her sister. What do you mean? Asked Hinata, her words saturated with concern. Naruto-sensei appeared to act disturbed and disgusted after talking with Satake when dismissing us, and Tenten-san appeared to be brooding at the memorial stone, explained Hanabi as she smartly smacked Neji's hand off of her shoulder and left the couple alone, once again noticing Neji's tensing up at hearing one of her teammates' names. Interesting, she thought as she closed the door behind her. Do you think that, started Hinata, unable to finish her sentence. Maybe, but we can't be sure. I'll go find Tenten-chan, said Neji as he hurriedly followed his cousin out of the room. Alright then, Lee, we're going to go visit Naruto Oji-san, whispered Hinata to her sleeping newborn as she slowly got up from her bed and walked out of the room in only slippers and a hospital gown, her infant in her hands. No one seemed to notice that she had left her room. Kazuki was pissed off, to put it mildly. First, he had been put on a squad with an idiot for a teacher. Then, that same idiot bested him, Satake Kazuki, head of the Satake clan, in battle. And to make matters even more humiliating, he was tied to a tree and then left there until someone decided to come along and release him. That someone happened to be Hyuga Hanabi. Kami, I hate her, scornfully thought Kazuki as he thought about the rather painful discussion with the Hyuga heiress after Naruto and Sasuke had left, which ended up in some of his tenketsu being sealed and a rather annoying cross-analysis of his conversation with their sensei. And now, to add even more insult to injury, the cousin of that Hyuga was now standing at his doorstep. Hello Neji, may I help you? Kazuki sneered at the Hyuga towering over him. What did you do? Neji asked coldly. I have no idea what you're talking about, said Kazuki, blatantly lying. With Naruto-san, Neji answered even colder than before. Kazuki felt shivers run up and down his spine after meeting Neji's gaze. Oh, you mean Baka-sensei. I only put him in his place. Now can I go sleep now? Your bitch of a cousin sealed off the tenketsu in my arms, explained Kazuki as he attempted to close the door in Neji's face, but Neji held the door open forcefully with his hand. What is it? The genin asked exasperatedly. You will show both Naruto-san and the Hyuga clan the proper respect, Neji almost growled. Says who? Anyway, what would your wife think of you when she finds out that you, an Anbu member, threatened a genin? Sneered Kazuki. I cannot speak in her stead, Kazuki-kun, but I can tell you that your father would feel deeply dishonored by your actions, calmly stated Neji. He seemed to have struck a nerve as Kazuki turned red with anger and balled up his hands into fists. What the hell would you know about my father, you inferior branch house member? Shouted Kazuki. I knew him very well before he defected, Kazuki-kun, and I can tell you that he was a man of dignity, honor, and tradition. But if he could see you now, he would never have left you to be the heir of the Satake clan, Neji told the angry boy. Who the hell do you think you are, barging into my house and admonishing me for doing what's right? And hell will freeze over by the time that a woman becomes the head of this clan, spat Kazuki. Your sister would have made a much better clan head than you, retorted Neji before he allowed the young clan head to close the door. And now to find Tenten-chan, thought Neji as he walked away from the Satake household and towards the memorial stone. Naruto-kun, Hinata called out as she knocked on the door again. Naruto, are you home? Hinata-chan, allow me, Hinata's partner said. Hinata moved out of the way of the pink-haired Kunoichi. Oi! Naruto, open up, Sakura yelled as she pounded hard on his door. Thanks for coming with me, Sakura-chan, thanked Hinata. And also for lending me some clothes. I wasn't exactly thinking straight when I left the hospital. She blushed when she said this as she remembered how the hospital gown was just a tad too small for and gained her some unwanted attention from some men. Luckily for her, Sakura was getting off of her shift and pounded the perverts. It's no problem, smiled Sakura. Naruto, we know you're home. Open up your damn door. Sakura roared and pounded the door a little too hard, causing it to fall inward. Oh Kami, was all Sakura could utter when she saw Naruto's dismantled apartment. Whose idea of a sick joke is this? She demanded to no one in particular. Hinata, I need to speak with Naruto privately, insisted Sakura. He's told me, about it I mean, said Hinata as she fought hard to keep back indignant tears. But where is the boy? Wondered Sakura aloud as she frantically searched the apartment for any trace of him. He's not here, the boy's missing, she muttered frantically. The boy? Asked Hinata. Naruto did something impulsive, again, and decided to take in an orphan, who's currently missing, Sakura explained. Do you know where Naruto's room is? Yes, it's down the hall, stammered Hinata. Come on, we're going to go find the baka, Sakura insisted as she gently pushed the stunned Hinata, who still cradled her newborn in her arms, down towards the hall and away from most of the hate writing, towards Naruto's room. Naruto, Hinata called as Sakura gently pushed open the door. They found Naruto, but along with him, they found a man bearing kitsune ears and 9 long, blood-red tails hovering above him. So, Kit, why didn't you tell me that you invited friends over? Asked the man as he turned his head to smile at the girls. But his smile was feral, and was that of a wild beast. Don't touch them, shouted Naruto as he jumped onto his feet. And why shouldn't I? They both have made your life miserable. Especially the pink-haired, Haruno Sakura, correct? The man asked as he approached the two girls. I told you not to walk any closer to them, shouted Naruto as he tried to restrain the Kyuubi's manifested body, but was stopped by a wrist firmly grasping his own. I have my own business with them, the Kyuubi stated as he thrust Naruto backwards and advanced first upon Hinata. You are the Momo monster that has caused Naruto-kun so much pain, stammered Hinata as she backed away from the kitsune. Why did you have to cause him so much pain? Hinata asked, tears of anger and sorrow running down her face. Oh, I'm a monster, am I? Who's the one who sealed me into their own son? Who's the one that made a defective seal that allowed my chakra to corrupt his entire body? Who has ignored and hated him for the mistake of his father? Who has repeatedly assaulted him? It certainly wasn't me, Hinata-san. You see, unfortunately, while my emotional and physical traits emerged in the kit, his traits have had a counter effect on myself. So now I can only keep up this manifestation of my demonic body by using an exponential amount of chakra and now, unfortunately, feel emotions unnatural to me, towards humans for that matter, as much as it may disgust me. It pains me to say this, but I do respect you, Hinata-san. Not many people can be so objective when faced with so much negative influence. And so, my dear, I have a gift for you. Please don't try and run away, because I don't want to have a reason to kill you, retorted the Kyuubi as he walked even closer to Hinata. Ah yes, fear is a good scent on you, Hinata-san, remarked the Kyuubi carnivorously as he bore his teeth in a feral grin. Then, suddenly, one of his tails shot out from behind him and hovered above the newly awoken Lee's head and then slowly dug itself into his forehead. Don't worry, Hinata-san, for this is merely a chakra manifestation of my body, remarked the Kyuubi as he saw that Hinata was beginning to sob hysterically and start to shake. The Kyuubi then withdrew its tail quickly, only slightly startling Lee, who was surprisingly complacent. He may want to wear a bandage to cover the seal on his forehead though, he remarked as what appeared to be ink slowly materialized itself on the infant's forehead. That's enough, you bastard fox! Roared Naruto as he radiated a large wave of killing intent. I won't stand by while you endow Hyuga Lee with power that negates his defects. Kyuubi finished. What do you mean by defects? Stammered Hinata, who was on the verge of a mental breakdown. What I mean is that some children born out of incest marriages in clans possessing Kekkei Genkei have mutated genes, either completely changing the bloodline or making it a hindrance. It was obvious from even the first time I sensed his chakra, explained the Kyuubi. But, what's wrong with him? Questioned Hinata as tears cascaded down her porcelain cheeks. Now where's the fun in that, Hinata-san? Did you really expect me to do any more than to repay you for assisting Naruto? Questioned the Kyuubi. Hinata solemnly shook her head and clutched her child even closer to her. That's enough, whispered Naruto angrily. Why do you choose now to suddenly appear, tell me? Demanded Naruto. Sorrow best complements sorrow, answered the Kyuubi. Just like how love is best complemented by itself. He then walked over to the stunned pink-haired Kunoichi, who was scared to death after seeing just a sample of the Kyuubi's power. Ah yes, the cherry blossom, the one who he has longed for all of his life yet was rejected time and time again. You chose the defected Uchiha over him, even despite the fact that he had defected and that Naruto had already proven time and time again that he was more worthy of your attention than he was. And now that he's dead, you've suddenly decided that he's worthy of you. You are pathetic. Do you have any words to say in your defense? The QB asked. Sakura merely bowed her head and spoke no word. Then I'll pass my judgment on you, smirked the QB as he leaned closer to Sakura, until their faces were almost pressed together. Your undying devotion to the Uchiha prodigy will be the death of the one you covet the most, he prophesied in a whisper, so that neither Hinata nor Naruto could hear his words. He then swiftly pulled back from the stunned Sakura. What do you mean? Asked Sakura, frightened by the demon's prophecy. You'll discover soon enough, but for now I bid you farewell, and the next time we meet, I won't be as kind, threatened the QB as his body disappeared in a poof of smoke. Immediately after, Naruto steadied himself against the wall as the demon's chakra re-entered his body. Hinata, I'm so sorry, apologized Naruto to one of his most precious people. It's not your fault Naruto-kun, responded Hinata morosely. I thought that the seal was secured, voiced out Sakura, which was only met by the mournful gaze of Naruto. It was, for a while, Naruto answered. It's been unstable ever since I returned from the sound mission. Now QB can manifest his own body for a short period of time and possesses better control over his own chakra, confessed Naruto. Naruto, he told me something, Sakura whispered as tears welled up in her eyes. What did he say? Asked Naruto frantically. He told me that your undying devotion to the Uchiha prodigy will be the death of the one you covet the most. Do you know what that means? Demanded Sakura. Naruto only turned his eyes to the ground. What does it mean? Insisted Sakura. Naruto. Please Naruto-kun, we only want to help, said Hinata, regaining her composure enough to stop most of her stuttering. No, retorted Naruto. It has to do with a personal matter. Sasuke? Asked Sakura. Sakura guessed by the surprised look in his eyes. I won't force you to tell us Naruto, but I just want to let you know that we're here for you if you need it, Sakura responded. She smiled slightly at the sight of Naruto visibly relaxing. She couldn't even imagine how stressed out he was feeling at that moment. Now can you please tell us what the hell happened to your apartment? Indignantly requested Sakura. I guess I don't have a choice, don't I? Asked Naruto with a defeated tone. Sakura and Hinata both shook their heads. Alright then, obviously you two know about furball, began Naruto. I told you not to call me that, the QB growled. Shut up. I don't want to deal with you right now, snapped back Naruto. This, he said as he gestured to his apartment, is the citizens' way of retribution. They believe that by destroying all of my material possessions that I'll just give up hope and leave them alone here. But, as you can see, I'm still here, explained Naruto. How long have they been doing this for? Demanded Sakura. How many times have you had to rebuild from virtually nothing? Too long and too many times, grimly replied Naruto. You're not telling us something Naruto-kun, voiced Hinata as she held her son close and kept her gaze focused on him, trying not to notice the symbol now etched into his forehead. I messed up, replied Naruto. I let her find out, and now she hates me. Who? Sympathetically asked Sakura as she embraced her friend, trying to comfort him, but Naruto just remained rigid and solemn. Tenten, said Naruto as he let his head rest on his friend's shoulder. You're wrong, insisted Hinata. What do you mean? Asked Naruto. Just like with Lee's endowment, Neji may act wary at first, but in the end I know that he'll love our son all the same, explained Hinata metaphorically. Do you mean that she loves me? Asked Naruto cautiously. Ever since his failed attempt with Hinata, he had been wary of any relationship deeper than good friendship. Naruto-kun, that is for you to find out on your own. No tree near the memorial stone was safe from Tenten's barrage of weapons as she flung them from her hands. Shuriken of all sizes and varieties embedded themselves into the trees as swords and other close-range melee weapons lopped large limbs off of the surrounding trees. I'm still not strong enough. I need to become even stronger, Tenten thought as she launched several shuriken from her hand, each one landing with a satisfying thunk on the tree's trunk, each one within a centimeter from each other. To preserve Lee's memory, thought Tenten as she slashed at one of the tree's branches with a chakra-infused wakizashi, slicing it clear off. To show my own worth, she thought as she started going through some kata with a quarterstaff, not failing to notice the presence behind her. To prove that I truly love him, she thought as, in the middle of her kata, pivoted her back foot sharply and swung around the quarterstaff at breakneck speeds to catch the intruder in the upper body. But instead of hearing the rewarding sound of reinforced steel come into contact with bone, there was a clang of metal meeting metal. It's nice to see you also, Tenten-chan, remarked Neji as he pushed the offending metal pole away from him. You, she growled. This is your fault, she yelled as she pointed her finger at him accusingly. What is my fault? Neji asked, feigning innocence. In fact, he formed a hypothesis after visiting the Satake clan head, and his belief in it was already beginning to be proven. You placed the doubts about Naruto in my head. Tenten shouted. Because of you I, stammered Tenten. Don't love him anymore, guessed Neji as he walked closer to his former love. I'm not sure anymore, Tenten whispered. I'm not sure if I love him or if I just need to be loved. After everything he's already gone through, I just don't want him to hurt even more because of a stupid mistake. She then felt a pair of arms embrace her and pull her into the chest of one Hyuga Neji. Do you know of what's in him? Tenten asked. Yes, I do, but does it really matter that much if I do know? Neji answered, which prompted a small smile from his past lover. Neji-kun, thank you, said Tenten as she hugged Neji back. But, what am I supposed to do? You need to figure that out for yourself, answered Neji as he held onto Tenten for a few more minutes, committing every aspect of her to memory as the gentle wind caressed their faces, until they finally released each other. Would you like to accompany me to dinner? Neji asked, knowing full well her answer ahead of time. Don't you remember? I have a date tonight, she answered as she left Neji at the memorial stone, gazing thoughtfully at the memorial stone. Do you see her now, Lee? How happy she seems. It's the happiest that she's been since you've died. I only hope that it'll last, thought Neji as he finally turned around and decided to find out what had happened between Hinata and Naruto. 2 pork ramen, the teen ordered as he leaned back on the stool and faced the boy sitting next to him, grinning. So, how was your first taste of what a real ninja is? It was alright, the boy answered as he tapped his fingers rhythmically on the wooden counter as he inhaled the delicious smell of ramen being cooked, emerald eyes bright with anticipation. So who's the unlucky bastard that's teaching you? The older boy asked. Uzumaki Naruto-san, answered Hige nonchalantly, and sniggered when his older brother fell off of his stool in shock. Are you alright, Ni-san? Hige asked as his brother rubbed the back of his head, where a bruise was already beginning to develop. Yeah, I'm fine. Now tell me the truth, who is really your sensei? Asked Kiba. The Hokage would have to have gone off her rocker to have allowed him to become a squad leader, he proclaimed loudly as 2 other people his age approached Ichiraku's ramen stand, where the Inuzuka brothers were waiting for their own ramen. Let who not become a squad leader? Asked Naruto as he sat down on the stool next to Hige as Sakura took a seat next to the elder Inuzuka. Hey Naruto-sensei. Ni-san was just saying how you couldn't possibly be my sensei because the only way that they would let you is if Hokage-sama was off her rocker, explained Hige cheerfully, which caused Naruto to get very, very angry. What is that supposed to mean, dogboy? Naruto boisterously asked. It means that the Hokage would have to be insane if she let you become a squad leader, loser, retorted Kiba just as boisterously. At least I don't smell like dog, shouted Naruto. What's wrong with dogs? Demanded Kiba as he pounded his fist on the counter. They smell, answered Naruto. And so the two began shouting and insulting each other as if they were genin again. Did they always fight like this? Oh, and by the way, I'm Inuzuka Hige, Hige said to the so far silent Sakura, both of them at least slightly annoyed at the loud voices attacking their ears. Yeah, even though they're 18 they still fight like little kids all the time, sighed Sakura. So is Naruto really your sensei? Yeah, Hyuga Hanabi, Satake Kazuki, Naruto sensei, and I all compose of this year's Team 7, explained Hige. But may I ask you a question? Sure. What is it? Asked Sakura as she tried to block out the yelling of her peers. Can I ask you somewhere a little more private? Requested Hige just as Ayame brought over 3 bowls of ramen, the pork ramen for the 2 Inuzukas and a bowl of Naruto's favorite, miso ramen. Instantly the two stopped their bickering and broke their chopsticks. Itadakimasu. Naruto practically yelled as Kiba muttered it. But both of them immediately began devouring their ramen like animals. As the two ate, Sakura pulled Hige away from the stand and out of the main street, into an alleyway. What did you want to ask me, Hige-kun? Sakura asked. First of all, you're Haruno Sakura, right? Asked Hige tentatively. Yes, affirmed Sakura. Somehow, she knew that she would not like the question that would come out of the young Inuzuka's mouth. Would you date my Ni-san? He really likes you but he's too shy to ask you out, requested Hige as he kept his eyes fixated on a point behind Sakura and rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. Is this some sick joke? Kiba. Shy? No way, I couldn't imagine it, thought Sakura. The hell are you waiting for? Say yes, damn it. Say yes and live again, damn it. Live, exclaimed inner Sakura, who the real Sakura tried her best to just ignore. So, will you? He prodded after a few minutes of silence. I stammered Sakura, not really knowing how to respond. She didn't want to make fun of the question in case what Hige was saying was the truth, but if she said yes and it was all a stupid joke. I'll tell you what, if your brother asks me out himself I'd go out with him, compromised Sakura, her logic being that if Kiba really did like her, she wouldn't embarrass him by saying now, but if it was a joke she wouldn't be humiliated. Fine, agreed Hige quickly. As he and Sakura began to leave the alley, he suddenly stopped and gazed quizzically at the back wall. Hey, is that blood on the wall there? He asked as he pointed to a slightly off-color spot on the wall. No, you must be seeing things, dismissed Sakura, seeing nothing wrong with the wall, as she left the alleyway with the younger boy and returned to the hospitable ramen stand, where she ordered a chicken ramen as Hige started eating his ramen, however less voraciously as his brother. As Kiba was taking a rather large bite of his ramen, Hige decided to start a conversation with him. Ni-san, guess what? Hige tantalizingly asked. Kiba turned his gaze towards his younger brother, brimming with bored apathy. Sakura-san said that she wants to go on a date with you. He cheerfully proclaimed, causing both Naruto and Sakura's eyes to bug out in disbelief and Kiba to choke on his ramen. He did not just do that, thought inner Sakura angrily. Just wait until I get my hands on you, kid, threateningly shouted inner Sakura before cackling madly. During inner Sakura's monologue, Sakura had sprung out of her seat and began performing the Heimlich maneuver on Kiba and managed to expel the food from his body. Are you alright? Asked Sakura as she stepped back from Kiba, who was coughing and gasping for breath. Yeah, I'm fine, answered Kiba. But is it true? He asked as he turned around to meet Sakura's nervous gaze, a hopeful look in his eyes as the lanterns that hung from the ceiling of the stand seemed to spotlight the two. Well, you see, stammered Sakura, having no clue whatsoever what to say in this situation as her eyes frantically searched for something, anything, to get her out of this situation. I can't believe that you chose the dog boy over me, pouted Naruto like a little kid. I mean, I've had a crush on you for how long? 7, 8 years and now you just decide out of the blue to date dog boy out of all people. I mean, if you disliked me that much then you could have at least have told me. Shouted Naruto as he grew angrier and angrier. You know what? I'm through with you. I've been nothing but kind to you and you've treated me like shit for the past 8 years, and I'm done, announced Naruto as he got up from his stool and violently stormed off from the ramen stand, leaving its occupants and proprietors stunned by the blonde's uncharacteristic anger. "Hey bastard!" shouted Kiba as he practically leapt from his chair in his anger. "Who the hell do you think you are, talking to her like that?" demanded Kiba as he ran up to Naruto, pulled his shoulder to the side so that he was facing Kiba, and then Kiba's fist connected with his jaw, causing Naruto to stumble back. "Don't talk to her like that, ever," growled Kiba as he clenched and unclenched his fists. "You think it's bad that Sakura chose me over you? I had to endure Hinata not only choosing you, the dead last, but her own cousin over me," he snarled. "Now get the hell out of my face." Naruto turned around and turned his gaze on Sakura, but there wasn't anger or resentment in his eyes. Instead there was something else, something that Sakura couldn't put her finger on. "Sakura, I'm sorry that you had to see that," apologized Kiba as he trudged back to his seat and began to eat his ramen with much less vigor than before. "He's right, you know, Kiba," admitted Sakura. "I really haven't given him what he deserved after all that he's done for me. Your undying devotion to the Uchiha prodigy will be the death of the one you covet the most." The demon fox's words rang throughout her head at this particular time. "Are you happy now, Sasuke? Are you happy that I'm so miserable? Are you laughing at me in hell right now?" bitterly thought Sakura. She then felt a pair of arms awkwardly wrap themselves around her from the behind, and found herself facing a sight she thought she would never see, Kiba blushing. She soon felt the blood rushing up to her cheeks as he kept the hold a little bit longer and she rested her head against his chest. "Thank you, Kiba," whispered Sakura. Hige just sat there slowly eating his ramen, amazed at what his actions brought upon the people around him. At that moment, he truly began to question the identity of his sensei. Is he a happy-go-lucky idiot or is he filled with anger and fit to burst at any second? He asked himself. "Damn, I really should apologize to him though, I had no clue how close he was to that Sakura girl," he thought. "I'm gonna go home, alright Ni-san," said Hige as he stood up from his stool, leaving a bowl of half-eaten ramen on the countertop. Kiba then seemed to realize that his younger brother was there and quickly let go of his hold on Sakura and sat down next to her. "Yeah sure," he answered quickly. "I hope I didn't ruin their friendship, though, but they were only fighting over a girl, right? How much could that possibly affect their friendship?" thought Hige as he left the ramen stand and breathed in a large breath of the crisp air that was around only at twilight as he began walking back to the Inuzuka compound, where his sister and mother would be awaiting his return. After aimlessly wandering about the streets of Konoha for a few minutes, Naruto leaned against the wall of a building and slumped down onto the ground perpendicular to it as he rubbed his tender jaw, wincing as he felt a slight dislocation. "Damn, the amount of crap that I have to put up with just by trying to help make the situation a tad less awkward really wasn't worth this," thought Naruto as he hugged his knees to his chest like when he was younger. But instead of doing it out of sadness or to prevent himself from being beaten all over his body, he simply savored how relaxing the moment was and how for once, he could go in slow motion instead of how he had accustomed life to be. Quick and unforgiving. Each moment could be his last and he needed to achieve his dream. He needed it. But now he could forget about his dream and his fast-paced life. He could actually enjoy the silence around him and envelop himself in it instead of always having to make noise and bring attention to himself. "What are you doing?" demanded a voice as its owner's shadow consumed Naruto's body. "I'm sitting here, do you have a problem with that?" growled Naruto, irate at having his peaceful silence, which he never got these days, interrupted. "Yes, as a matter of fact I do. You are supposed to come with me to eat tonight, yet you're just sitting here as if you have nothing better to do," complained the person as she put her hands on her hips and grinned. "So, are you coming or not?" Naruto was shocked to say the least. He immediately stood up and was about to say something when Tenten put a finger to his lips. "I don't care what's sealed in you, Uzumaki Naruto. I liked you before I knew, and I still like you now that I know," interjected Tenten. "That's nice to know, but I wasn't going to ask anything even remotely like that," confessed Naruto, somehow with a straight face. I was going to ask you if we could go out for ramen instead. 10 chapters are done, I can't believe it. Anyways, now that you've been somewhat acquainted with the new Team 7, what do you think? Who do you want to know more about? Who would you like to see more of in the future? But why not? He groaned as the two of them walked along the streets of the village. We've already went over this. I told you yesterday that ramen was out of the question, answered Tenten. But you also said that we'd be going to your house, Naruto retorted. The streets were seemingly empty now, with only a few children playing with each other and people walking home from work. Most of the merchants had already begun to pack up their wares and were heading home. Yeah, but do you really think we'd be able to live it down with my younger brother and your Sasuke there? Tenten asked. Naruto quickly shook his head, thinking of the mischievousness of younger kids, mainly his own traits. Then that's why we're going out, Tenten said, a tone of finality in her voice. Is there any place that you'd like to go? She always wondered what other kinds of food that Naruto liked. Maybe he likes barbecue. Seafood maybe, she thought, completely missing Naruto's answer. Tenten, Naruto asked. Oh, what? She answered, completely snapped out of her thoughts. Sorry, I zoned out. Yeah, I know. I don't, really, know any good places to go, he admitted as he became fixated with the dusty ground. Tenten could have slapped herself then. She should have guessed that there was a reason why he always went to Ichiraku's stand. She fretfully thought, wondering what she could do to make it up to him. Apologize for touching on an apparently sensitive issue. Out of the corner of his eye he noticed her fretting and felt bad for making her being distraught. It's alright, Tenten. I'm not that hungry anyway. I had some ramen at Ichiraku's before, Naruto said, only to feel a fist connect, hard, with his head. OWW, that hurt. He whined as he pouted like a child and tenderly rubbed the bruise that was appearing on his hard head. What was that for? I told you that ramen was out of the question, Tenten explained through a grin. Hey, Naruto. Yeah, what is it? He grumbled. Began Tenten. Hold that thought, Naruto said. I need to go. What's so important that you just need to interrupt my important revelation and then just leave me here? She demanded as she took a seat on a bench nearby. I've got to go take a piss, Naruto hurriedly revealed as he started to run back to his apartment. Tenten held her head in her palms as he ran off. Now that they might actually start a relationship, Tenten began to have some doubts, not about her faithfulness, but about how her family will take it, what their life would be like in the future, what their children would be like. Would it really work? She thought to herself. Of course, true love will always conquer even the fiercest of enemies in the end. Oh God, I'm starting to talk like Sakura and Ino when they were academy students, thought Tenten as she stretched out on the bench. She then looked up at the sky. That doesn't look too good, there are thunderheads out tonight. I hope we get into a restaurant before the rain comes. It only took several minutes for Naruto to reach his house and do his business. Thankfully, Sakura had assisted him in somewhat cleaning the house, now it was actually possible to live in it. He had no clue how he was going to explain to Sasuke what he had seen earlier though. After all, the famous Sharingan no Kakashi was his sensei, and if Naruto learned anything then it was how to squirm your way out of uncomfortable situations. Well, that and how to work efficiently as a team. Naruto frowned as he walked out of his apartment complex. It had begun to rain and he had left Tenten on that bench on the other side of town. Shit. I hope she's not that wet yet. I really was looking forward to going to dinner with her tonight, thought Naruto as he began running through the damp streets of the Leaf Village. Luckily for him, and for Tenten, it was only drizzling so the ground wasn't soggy or muddy yet. As he was running blindly through the streets, the last thing he'd expected to come into contact with was another villager, especially the fist of one. But he did. He was sent spiraling into the walls of a store, a weapon store by a fist coming into connection with the side of his head. And standing over the dazed, injured, and angry Naruto was none other than Hyuga Neji. A very wet and a very angry Hyuga Neji. Naruto grabbed onto the slippery wall for support with one hand and he clutched his bleeding head with the other hand as he slowly got up onto his feet, baring his teeth as if they were fangs. What the hell was that for? Naruto demanded as his vision swam, a feeling of drunkenness overcoming his senses. You destroyed it, Neji said in a frighteningly monotone tone. This was not his usual monotonous voice though. This tone was completely devoid of any emotions, of any inhibitions whatsoever, the voice of a killer. What are you talking about, Neji? I didn't destroy anything, pleaded Naruto. My last chance for happiness. You destroyed it, Neji said once again as he stood stock still in the rain dripping from his long, dark hair and matted it to his white kimono, which was starting to develop a translucent quality to it. I still have no clue what the hell you're talking about, answered Naruto with a goofy grin on his face, knees wobbling and the disorientation from Neji's blow still affecting his body. You branded my child a demon, Neji stated, his chest visibly moving with each of his breaths. Naruto frowned as the full impact of the current situation became fully known to him. He had branded Neji's child, and apparently Neji wasn't very fond of the idea. Neji, it doesn't mean that his entire life is ruined, just give him a cloth bandana or something to cover it up and he'll grow up like a normal Hyuga brat would, Naruto stated as if it was the simplest solution in the world. He knew it wasn't though, he knew that by some means people would discover his secret. And then he'd be given the stigma of demon. Do you have any idea what it feels like, Naruto? To know that your own son, your own goddamn son, will never grow up normal. Well, do you? Neji demanded. He had finally snapped, and anger was the first of all of his emotions to show as he suddenly burst into action and charged Naruto, kunai in hand. Naruto clumsily got out a kunai and was able to only just block Neji's assault. But Naruto was disoriented and had an incredibly weak guard, which Neji penetrated easily and slashed Naruto across the wrist. No, Neji, I have no fucking idea how it must feel to know that your son will have to go through that. But you know what? I actually know what it's like to go through that, Naruto retorted as he felt a large burst of the Kyuubi's chakra mixed with adrenaline enter his bloodstream. It's all you're good for, you stupid ball of fur. Naruto quickly brought up his kunai to guard Neji's next attack and pushed Neji back with a particularly large burst of chakra, sending Neji careening back several feet. Naruto instantly jumped off the wall and as he came to the ground, tried to bring his leg down onto Neji's shoulder. At least you knew you had friends growing up, Naruto. I was completely alone, Neji snapped as he grabbed Naruto's leg, twisted it, and then brought Naruto the ground in one motion. What in the name of Kami are you talking about? I was alone for the first 12 years of my life. No one would come anywhere near me unless they wanted to torture me. Yet you were the Hyuga prodigy. Every person in Konoha could only wish that their kid was friends in you cause you were so fucking perfect. Naruto yelled with rage as he spat the muck from his mouth, rolled onto his back, and performed a kip up and attempted to hit Neji in the chest, but was knocked to the side. Naruto used the extra momentum to spin in the air and once again bring his leg down onto Neji's shoulder. Neji blocked the move and was about to throw Naruto back to the ground but was forced to block Naruto's follow-up roundhouse to his head. He then found that he had nothing left to guard with as Naruto brought back his fist and brought it down with amazing force onto Neji's face, causing him to release both of his blocks. Both shinobi then regrouped and stared each other down from opposite sides of the street. My life was far from perfect, Naruto. You have not the faintest inkling how difficult growing up as an orphan in the Hyuga house was. I had to provide everything for myself, I didn't have teachers to teach me the Juken. I had to learn it from countless scrolls that were riddled with errors. You thought that it was bad that you had no family. I lived with a family that detested my very existence. Yelled Neji. Suddenly the two exploded into action, only blurs to the untrained eye of a civilian of Konoha as metal clanged against metal and flesh hitting flesh. Then, out of the blue, they stopped fighting and stood on the opposite side of the street as before, both of them bruised, bloodied, and battered. I was so obsessed with bringing down the main house of the Hyuga clan that I missed out on everything that a child is supposed to enjoy. I never cared about anyone else, even though people would have died to befriend me. I never had a moment of relaxation or peace, and Cammy knows that I've never had fun. All I did was work. People may have thought that I was an all-perfect prodigy, but I'm not. If I was, I would have seen that friendship was more important than revenge. Neji roared as he charged Naruto and executed a Juken combination on him, hitting several important tenketsu in his lungs. He then found that Naruto was no longer Naruto, he was a log. Neji then found someone holding something metallic, sharp, to his neck and felt heavy breathing travel down his neck. And what the hell does this have to do with why you're attacking me? Naruto exasperatedly asked as he shakily held the kunai to his friend's throat. I've never truly felt happiness in my life, Naruto, not when I was young and not now. But, once I'd found out that I had a child, I began to feel it. I began to feel that maybe I'd be truly happy, maybe I'd finally have my happy ending. But then you came along and ruined it. You ruined my last chance that I'd ever have of ever truly feeling happy, Neji said through heavy breaths, his hair falling in front of his eyes. How could you possibly say that? You still have your entire life ahead of you. And you still have Hinata-chan. How could you possibly say that you're not happy even though you have so much? Demanded Naruto. He couldn't understand his friend's unhappiness. Naruto grew up with nothing, while he grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth. He would have killed for the attention that Neji got when he grew up, and could not understand how Neji could dismiss all of that as nothing. How can I possibly be truly happy when I love another as well? Neji demanded. He couldn't even register Naruto's movement as he punched Neji as hard as he could across the face and into the muddy ground. You have a child now, Neji. How can you possibly say that you don't love Hinata? That is, just wrong. Naruto yelled. I love Hinata, I never said that I didn't. But there is another who I still hold in my heart with that same affection, Neji explained as he got up from the mucky ground, his clothes completely soiled and rain still falling from the sky, but harder now. Now it was coming down hard and fast, like a storm. Neji, you bastard, how could you do that to her? She's never done anything to you. The only thing she's ever wanted to do is to help you, and you repay her with what? False love, a fake feeling of acceptance. You say you love somebody else but you still have a damn baby with Hinata. What kind of monster are you? Naruto yelled as he grabbed the collar of Neji's collar tightly, ripping the garment. I cannot manipulate my emotions at the flip of a coin, that is human nature. I cannot help it if I still hold love for the woman I was torn away from prematurely. But do not mistake it, Naruto. I love Hinata with my very heart and soul, and I love Lee despite his indisposition, Neji said. Then why the hell are we fighting? Naruto demanded as the effects of the Kyuubi's chakra began to fade and Naruto began to feel weaker than ever. You have injured one of my precious people, Uzumaki Naruto, and I could not allow you to get away with that unharmed, informed Neji callously. You bastard, growled Naruto. All because of your little plot to get vengeance for something that I had no part in doing whatsoever. I lost the opportunity to go out to dinner with Tenten and I left her alone in the rain. He vented as he cracked his knuckles. Then you better go get her, Uzumaki, Neji admonished as he began to walk away from the blonde ninja. Well, what the hell do you think I'm going to do? Just let her sit outside in the rain? Naruto asked. And don't think I'm finished with you yet, Hyuga boy, yelled Naruto as he ran off to where he left Tenten waiting for him. Shit, I hope she's not that mad with me, thought Naruto as he pumped his legs with even more of the fox demon's chakra to get there faster. Sweat and rain intermixed as he worked his still slightly disoriented body to the max to reach the girl. In a few minutes that seemed to be an eternity, he finally reached the bench where his friend had sat down to wait for him. It was empty. He couldn't bear it anymore. He just collapsed onto the bench, propped his arms onto his legs and then held his face within his tanned, calloused hands. Damn it, he whispered to himself. He hadn't really expected her to be waiting there for him, who would wait 15 minutes out in the pouring rain. I can't say that I blame her though. Hell, I wouldn't have waited even 5 minutes, sighed Naruto. He couldn't bring himself to face her now. He had messed up twice in a row, and now he had left her outside in the rain to wait for him. I want to make it up to her, Naruto said to himself. I want to show that I can be kind without acting like an idiot. I want to show her that her kindness isn't wasted. It was at that time that he happened to look up from his hands and read the name of the store across the street, which was still open. A large grin began to show on his face as he felt for his frog wallet, which was quite large and safely tucked within a trick pocket in his pants. He quickly jumped off of the bench and practically leapt into the store, more than willing to part with the money necessary to show his deep regrets for the events that transpired that night. She couldn't concentrate at all once he had left. She knew that she was at the ramen stand with Kiba, but at the same time, she wasn't. She was in the past, living with Sasuke, Naruto, and Kakashi, when all she had to worry about was whose garden she'd be weeding or whose cat she'd be trying to retrieve from the forest and whether or not Sasuke would love her or not. And then they could live happily ever after with 10 kids, all girls, away from Ino and Naruto. She couldn't bear all of the problems she had to deal with now. Dealing with the death of the boy she had vowed would be made her spouse, actual relationships, and sacrificing friendships for that love. She just wanted life to be as easy as it was when she was 12, especially with love. Back then you had an idea of who likes who, but this. It had been so sudden, so rushed, that she had no time to think. She couldn't have just told him that his brother flat out lied. She had already ruined one person through flat out rejection and she would never do it again. But before she could decide, Naruto basically erupted and in the course of 5 seconds Kiba had become her comfort. Why did teenage love have to be so complex? Sakura, are you okay? Kiba asked with concern, but that triumphant smile of his was plastered on his face, just as it had been for the past 15 minutes. Sorry. Did you say something, Kiba? Sakura asked confusedly as she absent-mindedly stirred her ramen around with her chopsticks. Are you alright? You don't look that great, pointed out Kiba. Yeah, I guess I'm not feeling that great, admitted Sakura as she firmly focused her eyes on Kiba, who was starting to slightly frown. You should go home then, Sakura. It wouldn't do for any of us if went and got sick on my account, Kiba commanded. He didn't fool her though, she could see the silent pleading to, stay, please stay with me forever, in his eyes. She knew because she herself wore the same smile for so many years. Sorry Kiba, I really want to stay, but I don't think I'm up to it, said Sakura with a sad smile. He smiled back, but it was forced. Alright, see you soon. Kiba asked. Yeah, see you soon, replied Sakura as she paid for her ramen. She then began the walk home in the pouring rain. With every step, it seemed, she stepped in puddles that broke under weight and splattered her clothes as cold droplets of water bombarded her from above. And if anything, the rain made her think of Naruto more, whether he was at home or somewhere in the village moping out here in the rain. Naruto, muttered Sakura as her mind replayed a painful memory, when the Uchiha Rakan team was returned. They all waited together in the small waiting room of the Konohagakure hospital for any news on their friends. The atmosphere in the room was tense and quiet, the only sounds being the sounds of footsteps echoing on the floor as Tenten paced back and forth, her brow furrowed in thought. It was then that she broke down crying. She just couldn't stand everything around her just stand still, nor could she stand the fact that one of her teammates, her friends, was in the hospital possibly dying. And still there was no word on Sasuke. She soon felt, rather than saw, someone looming over her crying self. Don't worry, it's going to be alright, soothed the person standing above her as her tears were wiped away by soft hands, kind hands. They just made her cry harder, remembering the times when she would wish for Sasuke to do the very same to her. Sasuke-kun, Sakura whimpered through her tears. She had not meant to say it out loud, but it had just slipped out. At hearing this, the kind hands of the person turned dangerous as one was brought hard across the pink-haired girl's face, resonating with a loud slap. Grow up, Sakura. Sasuke's gone and he's not coming back, but Naruto, he's here in this building. He could be dying in there on the operating table, alone, and all you can think about is fucking Uchiha, who abandoned us all for his own selfish intents. Well, I hope you end up with him, because you deserve each other, shouted the person as Sakura held her hand up to her tender cheek, now completely mute. She didn't even look up to see who it was that had slapped her as the person stormed out of the hospital in a rage. She had blocked herself off from reality, listening only to the voices in her mind. It was then that Sakura began to think that Naruto deserved better than her. She shook her head to try and stop the memory from replaying in her head, for she still felt in her heart the events that transpired after it, finding out Sasuke had died, going to his funeral without Naruto, apologizing to him, and now today, leaving him again for another man. I truly don't deserve a friend like him, thought Sakura ruefully as she consciously stopped her feet from moving. For the past few minutes she had allowed them to take her to somewhere, anywhere, and they had chosen this old, rotting building. The apartment complex where one Uzumaki Naruto resided. Sakura mustered all of her willpower, and pushed open the double doors of the apartment building to face the product of all of her childhood wrongs. She felt drained, both physically and emotionally, as she lay on the hospital bed with her, thankfully sleeping, son in the room she was designated. First off, her stamina was severely decreased, so even visiting Naruto took a lot out of her. Then of course was the incident with the Kyuubi and Lee, which drained her even more. But the worst experience of all had been to relay the experience to Neji, who, for the first time that Hinata remembered, simply exploded. He had started to yell and punching things, very uncharacteristic for the usually stoic Hyuga, and then out of the blue stormed out, leaving Hinata with a crying infant. It truly was not a sight she ever wished to see again. It was as she was about to succumb to her exhaustion that someone began knocking on the door. Who's there? Demanded Hanabi, who was sitting in a chair next to her sister. It's me, Tenten, answered the person beyond the door. Normally, Hanabi wouldn't have allowed anyone to visit her sister when she was this tired, but even she, a genin, noticed the disguised weariness and desperation in her voice, so she looked to Hinata to see what she wanted. She nodded her head slowly in response. Hanabi then got up and opened the door for Tenten. Good evening, Tenten-san, greeted Hanabi formally. Good evening, responded Tenten, forcing a smile on her face. Hanabi, can you go find a towel for Tenten? Hinata requested. Hanabi turned around to face her sister and raised an eyebrow at her request. She knew that the hospital just rent out towels. But Hinata only beckoned her to leave. Hanabi sighed and began her fruitless journey to find a towel for the girl. Hello, Tenten-chan, said Hinata softly and beckoned her friend to sit in Hanabi's recently vacated seat. What may I owe the pleasure of your visit to? Tenten walked to the chair and then sat down as if she wasn't really there, as if her soul was off in some other place. Tenten-chan, are you alright? Hinata asked. It was then that the tears began to fall. She didn't sob. She would never show anyone that kind of vulnerability, but the silent tears fell as Tenten hung her head. I'm only human, she whispered as she gripped the arms of the chair. What's wrong? Asked Hinata, now concerned with her friend. She had only seen her cry twice before, at the Sandame's funeral and at Lee's funeral. I know I shouldn't be this bothered by it, because I know that he's not like that, but still, I'm only human, muttered Tenten, still eluding from what's been troubling her. Who's he? What happened? Inquired Hinata, desperately wishing that she could wrap her arms around her friend to try to comfort her. We were going to go out, Naruto and me. We were gonna go to a restaurant, a nice fancy one, like in the movies, and maybe we'd, I don't know, it sounds so stupid now. Maybe we could have hooked up. Maybe become lovers and start a family. I don't know, but I know that I wanted him, for whom he is. And maybe, just maybe, I could have helped him get over his obsession with his curse. It sounds childish, But that's what I really wished for deep in my heart. But it didn't happen. No, instead he left me outside in the rain for the past 20 minutes. I know that he's not manipulative like that or anything, but, I'm only human Hinata-chan. I still feel emotions like sadness and rejection even though I act like I could give a shit. It made feel unwanted, and it really sucks to feel like that. I made a promise to myself once my dad died. I had promised myself that I would be strong, that I wouldn't let my family down, that I would never cry. But I guess that I couldn't even do that. Am I that useless Hinata-chan? Tell me the truth. Do I even have a purpose in life? Or was I just born for Kami to play with, trying to see how horrible he can make my life? Confessed Tenten as she tried to wipe away her tears with the sleeve of her shirt, a futile effort considering that her sleeve was soaking wet. I'm sorry Hinata-chan. I didn't mean to concern you but I just needed to vent. Don't be Tenten-chan. All of us need to let our feelings out from time to time, and I think you need to especially. And no matter what Naruto is like usually, there's no excuse for what he did, comforted Hinata, her voice becoming angrier as she said the last part. She had known Naruto almost for her entire life, and she had never known him to do something so horrible. No, there is no excuse, concurred a previously unacknowledged voice. He had entered the room unnoticed as the women were enveloped in Tenten's confessions. Sorry Ne-san, there weren't any towels available, announced Hanabi as she walked past the man in the doorway. And I told him that you two were having a private conversation but he wouldn't hear of it. Right sensei? Who? The person at the door asked to the mysterious woman outside his door. Uzumaki Naruto, the guy who lives in this apartment, prodded Sakura. Sorry lady, but I don't know what you're talking about. I've lived in this apartment for the past 5 years and there's never been any Uzumaki Narutos here, the man argued. Sakura had to restrain herself from knocking the guy out cold. First off, he looked like a creep. He had small beady eyes that seemed to beg for more of everything. He had a receding hairline which he vainly tried to hide by combing it across his head, and what was left was greasy and dirty, and he wore this snide smirk as if he knew everything in the world. And secondly, she knew this was Naruto's apartment, she had just been here an hour or two ago. Listen, I was here, in this apartment with Uzumaki Naruto earlier today. I know that this is his apartment. How many times do I have to tell you? Uzumaki Naruto never lived here, and trust me, I'd know if he did. I would never live in an apartment that a demon lived in, he snidely said. That was when Sakura snapped and the shit hit the fan. An awkward silence settled upon the four, the atmosphere suffocating as Tenten, Hinata, and Naruto exchanged glances. It's getting late, Hanabi stated in a relaxed, aloof tone as she walked towards the sole window in the room, which was located on the wall to the right of the hospital bed. But she then suddenly became tenser. You, she said, pointing to Tenten, and you, she pointed this time at Naruto. Get out. Ainui needs her sleep and she certainly won't get any if you two keep interrupting her, she commanded as she pointed towards the ajar door that Naruto stood in front of. Hinata began to protest but was cut off before she could say anything more. It's perfectly fine, Hinata-chan. Anyways, you'll never be able to come back on active duty if you don't rest up, Tenten interjected as she forced a smile onto her face for her friend. Hinata clasped her friend's hand and mouthed the words, "Good luck," to her. Naruto had spared no time leaving the hospital room. Ever since he had entered the room, Hinata had been glaring at him. Naruto was used to glares, he grew up with only anger and hatred as his companions, but never before had Hinata been more than slightly annoyed with him. He truly was afraid of the full extent of the girl's wrath. But more than that, he was afraid of losing a friend. But he also noticed something else, and it was far more spirit-breaking than that. He had seen Tenten, the girl that Naruto had never even seen frown before except for 1 or 2 occasions, cry. She was crying because of what he did to her. Tenten slowly got up from her chair and slowly walked out of the room dripping wet as she began shivering almost uncontrollably. It was only as she left that the Hyuga siblings began to talk. Hana, you didn't have to be so strict with them, Hinata lightly scolded. Hanabi sighed in response. How could I not? They would only cause you to worry if they carried out their little squabble here. And anyway, they wouldn't have been able to truly discover themselves with us here, now would they? Hanabi asked as she closed the window shades. No, they wouldn't, concurred Hinata in defeat. I just hope that those finally get the happy ending they deserve. Hanabi shrugged indifferently to the notion. She could care less about others' personal lives as long as it didn't interfere with her own. You're crying, Naruto stated as Tenten and him stood face to face. No, Naruto, I'm fine, Tenten objected weakly as she tried to walk past the blonde ninja. No, you're not. Please, let me, Naruto pleaded as his eyes seemed to be begging for something. For what? Tenten didn't know. But she did know that all she wanted was to get home, and soon. Just let me go, Naruto, please, Tenten pleaded as she felt the shivering become more intense. I just want to go home, she whined as she wiped her eyes with her wet sleeve, only resulting in her looking even more distraught. At least let me tell you I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to take that long, it's just that I got distracted and, Naruto attempted to explain. However, it seemed to hurt, more than help his cause as Tenten roughly pushed him aside. You have no idea, she said without turning back to look at him. You have no idea how much I'm hurting now. How would you like it if all of a sudden your dreams that seemed so impossible just a day ago become a possible reality, something that you had believed for your entire life to be childish suddenly becomes so mature, so adult-like. Now imagine it being ripped away from you. Would you like it, Naruto? Would you like to be suddenly told that you're going to become Hokage and then at the naming ceremony, be laughed at when another's name is announced? Would you like having to wait outside in the freezing rain for 20 minutes only to find out that the person you were waiting for just got distracted? Now get out of my way, Naruto, I'm going home. Without you, Tenten confessed emotionally, tears falling freely from her cheeks as she ran out of the hospital. She could feel it in her bones, she was close to collapsing right then and there. But she couldn't. No, definitely not near him. She had already exposed too much of her weakness, and she refused to let him find her, cold and sick. She needed to get away, get home. She was able to run for several minutes before her orientation began to diminish. Every other step she'd stumble and the fear of falling gripped her very soul. She knew that if she fell, she wouldn't get up on her own. It was the next step that got her. A kid had left his or her ball outside and she had not seen it in her feverish days. She had tripped over it and fell onto her face, skidding in the wet earth as it splattered all over her clothing. At least his apartment is in the opposite direction, Tenten thought gratefully as the rain pounded down on her still body. She then slowly closed her eyes and let the fever devour her, the dark clouds hanging ominously overhead. It was within your fears that I found my dreams. But they were never meant to be. Only made to wash away in the stream. Now I'm going to ask you again, where is Naruto? Growled Sakura as she put even more pressure on the man's arm, which she had twisted against his back as she held him against the wall. For the last goddamn I don't know where that demon spawn is. Now let go of me before I report you for assault and breaking into my apartment. Threatened the man as he tried to struggle against Sakura's grip. His effort was futile, however. Sakura then threw the man by his shirt into a dresser across the room. The man hit the dresser with a grunt and collapsed to the ground, limp. It was then that the full reality struck her. She had broken into a man's apartment and beat him unconscious merely because she believed that somehow, he had stolen Naruto's apartment and then completely changed it in less than an hour. It seemed completely irrational to her now, but now the question was annoying her to no end. If this wasn't Naruto's apartment, then where was it? All she knew was that it really wouldn't look good if someone happened to walk by and find her in the room with an unconscious man in it. So Sakura did the only thing she could do, she checked the man for any serious injury. And when she found none, she bolted out of the apartment complex and into the pouring rain. Shit, it's still raining, moaned Sakura as she held her arm over her head and ran towards where her and her mother lived. After several minutes of running, she suddenly skidded to a stop. She was right near the memorial stone and she could swear that she could hear sobbing and hastily spoken apologies choked out in between sobs. Sakura could not stand the sound of crying. She knew that it may make her sound hypocritical, but she just couldn't stand crying. Maybe because she herself cried so often that it began to turn into a bone of contention. Every time she'd cry, she'd simultaneously mentally scream at herself for acting like such a baby. And so, with the intention of trying to comfort whoever was making such a cacophony of sounds, she walked through the forested pathway that led to the memoriam and gazed sadly upon the sight in front of her. Naruto, whispered Sakura in empathetic pain. He was the one on the ground on his hands and knees sobbing and apologizing. She couldn't help but feel responsible somehow. Everything she did seemed to hurt him, even though he never deserved it. She had always found ways, consciously in her childhood, and now in her adulthood subconsciously, ways to discourage and disparage him. Yet he had always been there for her when she needed it. Now, it was her turn to step up to the plate. In your morning eyes, I found the courage to retrieve my dreams from the raging currents. So they're not here? He asked Hanabi. He had been sent by Tenten's mother to tell Tenten that she was needed at her house, but he couldn't find her, nor could he find Naruto. He couldn't help but worry about him, his father. Naruto looked so used to what he saw in his apartment that it was frightening, disturbing really. He couldn't imagine how many times that must have happened to him if Naruto wasn't surprised at all. No, for the last time, Naruto-sensei isn't here and nor is Tenten-san. Now go home, Sasuke. I really don't like being pestered by brats, Hanabi commanded flatly as she turned her back to him. Wait, I didn't come all this way in the pouring way just to be turned back by some stuck-up brat, objected Sasuke angrily. He had been searching for the past 20 minutes at least for the two ninja, only to be directed to the hospital by the waitress at a restaurant. She had told him that this was where one of Naruto's best friends was staying, and that she would probably know where he had headed off. She had also solemnly noted that he seemed to be in a bad mood. Sasuke had known at that moment that finding Naruto would be a chore. It was intuition, mainly, but it proved to be right. Listen, Sasuke, unlike my sister or my cousin, I couldn't care less what happens to Naruto-sensei or Tenten-san. As long as I get trained, I'm perfectly fine with whatever happens to those around me. So just screw off, you're not wanted here. And if you don't leave by preference, I'll make you leave the painful way, threatened Hanabi as she walked back into her sister's room and shut the door in Sasuke's face behind her. To say that he was downtrodden by Hanabi's answer would be an understatement. He had been absolutely positive that this woman, Hinata, the waitress had told him her name was, could tell him where Tenten and Naruto were. But now, he had nothing to go on, nothing whatsoever. I should just head back to Tenten's house. After all, it's not like I can be punished for not being able to do something that I had done out of goodwill. Sasuke shrugged to himself as he shoved his hands into his pockets and walked out into the rain. It's so gloomy out, he sighed. He never did like the rain. It reminded of his first memory of him, the man who had abandoned him in the streets of the village to fend for himself. What is this place? The young boy no older than 5 asked an older man, a shinobi. A loud congregation of people talking, bargaining, arguing, or just going to their destination surrounded them. He had never seen a place so loud or crowded. This place is Konoha, Sasuke. This is your new home, the man said as he released the grip on the boy's hand and disappeared into the crowd. Instantly the boy began to panic as he desperately looked around for the man. Ji-san, where are you? Cried Sasuke. However, no one answered him, nor did anyone in the village try to assist him. Don't worry, Sasuke-kun, I'll come back for you in a few years. But right now, we need you here. Serve us well, whispered a voice from the crowd. Sasuke instantly snapped his head around to locate the man, but failed. Don't worry, Jii-san, I'll make sure to make you proud, Sasuke vowed as he himself disappeared into the crowd. It had been raining that day, lightly at first, but later into the day it had begun to pour. Sasuke grimaced as he remembered what he had to resort to in those days. He had to sleep wherever he could find a vacant spot, and it was only by a sheer stroke of luck that he had found an abandoned mansion that was stocked with food. Of course, it only lasted for a while until people began to see him enter and exit the house. Then they placed guards around it and kept it under lock and key. Sasuke watched with a mild curiosity as his feet created ripples in the puddles as he stepped in them. He had always wondered the exact reason why water reacted like that. When he was younger, he had believed that water liked to be alone, and that the rippling meant that they wanted people to go away and leave them be, but he had since threw away that theory. It was as he was watching the rippling puddles that he had noticed the hand. It was just lying there in the street, pale, soaked, and dirty. Sasuke then saw the arm that was attached to the hand, and soon he could fully make out the body. It was Tenten. She was just lying there like a rag doll, limp and unmoving. Sasuke froze up at the sight. He remembered how, just a few hours ago, she was teaching him how to throw a kunai and how to properly care for them. How, only that morning, she had smiled at him and welcomed him without any problem. After several moments, he slowly slung her shoulder over his own and half-carried, half-dragged her back to Tenten's house, which was also the weapon shop that he had been dropped off at that morning. Luckily, she had not collapsed very far from her house, so it did not take an enormous amount of effort. Sasuke pounded frantically on the front door of the house, and after what seemed like an eternity, the door was finally answered by the 12-year-old who Sasuke had grown to hate over the last 24 hours. "So, where is she?" the boy demanded as he opened the door. His eyes bugged out and he tried speaking, but no words came out. Sasuke pushed his way past the older boy as he brought in the unconscious girl. Oni-chan, he whimpered as he saw the paleness and fragility of his older sister. He then violently turned on Sasuke. You did this to her. Was this your sick idea of revenge for what I said about your precious father? What the fuck is wrong with you? How could you do this to my Oni-chan, he yelled. But as he began to talk more and more, the more that the tears fell. And soon enough he had turned into a sobbing wreck, clinging to his sister's body as his mother rushed into the room with a dry set of clothes, towels, and a medical kit. Sasuke could not believe what he was seeing. The genin that, earlier today, was talking as if he was the only person worthy to live even as he was tied to a tree was now crying like an infant, clutching to his older sister like one would a favored plaything that was about to be destroyed. He attempted to comfort Kazuki but was answered with a swift blow across his head. Don't you dare try and comfort me, you little bastard. I know you did something to her. So just leave here and don't come back. You won't be missed. Go back to that demon you dare call a father, or go crawl into a cave and die for all I care. But I promise that I'll kill you if dare set a foot back inside my house, spat Kazuki as he bore into Sasuke with eyes of steel. Sasuke didn't have to be told twice to leave there, but before he did, he told Kazuki one thing. I didn't do anything to her. Why would I have brought her back here if I did? He then angrily left the Satake household and ran as fast as he could. He didn't know where he was running, but he knew that anywhere was a better place to be than here, in this village. Even though he may have had a father in Konoha, he never had, nor did he ever plan to, have a home in Konoha. He would leave this god-awful place for good, no matter the price. But how can a dream become reality when it is never-ending? He stood, memorized, in front of the large house, the one he lived off of for a year or so while he lived in the village of Konoha. For some reason, Sasuke couldn't bring himself to walk away from it. For an unknown reason it held his consciousness within its grounds, and would refuse Sasuke's internal pleas to leave. It sucks what happened, don't you think? Asked a voice from behind him. Sasuke jumped at the sudden sound and turned around to face with a woman wearing a white shirt that hugged her body, long, tight beige paints that were slit from the thigh up, revealing dense fishnet stockings, and a long, tan overcoat that seemed to envelop the entirety of her body and cloud it with the mystery of what lay beneath the woman's guarded appearance. What do you mean? What happened? Questioned Sasuke. But even as he began to converse with this woman, there was a voice inside of his head screaming at him to just run, run and leave this horrible place in the dust. For the love of Kami-sama, kid, what the fuck have they been teaching you in school? She disgustedly asked. Sasuke hung his head sheepishly. I haven't started school yet, he explained. The woman only ground the heel of her palm into her forehead in frustration. Alright, well, was, the compound of the Uchiha clan, the woman began to explain. You do know about them, right? Sasuke only gave her a blank look in return, which only frustrated her more. Well, they were one of the most prominent, and screwed up, clans. And 11 years ago, the entire clan was wiped out except for 2 people. Why? Sasuke interrupted. I was getting to that, she irritably explained. The first person survived because he himself was the one to kill his clan, and the other to survive was his younger brother, who watched his parents murdered before his very eyes. And so he was pretty messed up for the rest of his life, she remarked reminiscently, a faint smile on her face. I've got to admit, he was talented, for a spoiled brat, that is. So, he's dead now? Sasuke asked. The woman sighed in exasperation. Of course he's dead. The woman snapped. Do feel sorry for him, the younger brother? Sasuke asked, preparing himself for some kind of stark retort. No, I could never feel sorry for scum like him. Uchiha Sasuke could rot in hell for all I care, she spat. It's that blonde idiot who killed him who I feel sorry for. His own best friend, the Uchiha, left him out to die, and now, years later, that same person was killed by his own hands. He must be an emotional wreck, she explained solemnly as she looked upon the mansion which appeared haunted in the distorted moonlight. Uchiha, Sasuke? Sasuke asked himself. Is that the same man Naruto Tenten was talking about? His teammate, the person I look like? I don't know why I'm telling you all this though, you were bound to learn some watered down, kid-friendly version in school, she admitted. Why do you talk of Naruto to Naruto-san like that though? Sasuke questioned. He doesn't seem like an idiot. He's really nice, and kind. So you know him, Anko stated rather than asked. But you never knew him when he was your age, she claimed reminiscently. When he was a genin he was a loud-mouthed, impotent, cocky, stubborn, little pain in the ass. But he had his good points, she said as she tilted her head back up towards the sky, not seeming to mind the raindrops that seemed to assail her. Kunoichi-san? Asked Sasuke, trying to get the woman's attention, who seemed to have gone into a type of trance. What is it? Snapped the woman flatly without looking back at the boy. Sasuke flinched at the harshness in her voice. I was just wondering, how do you know Naruto-san? It's just, you spoke as if you knew him well, Sasuke mumbled, averting eye contact with the woman. It's none of your business, Gaki, retorted Anko. Why do you care anyway? How old are you? 6, 7. Even if you did know him, anything you knew would be a lie. What do you mean? Sasuke asked, a primordial fear starting to grow in the pit of his stomach. What I mean is that Uzumaki Naruto has a notorious reputation in this village, Anko stated. What kind of reputation? Sasuke inquired, curious. He has a reputation of being the #1 most unpredictable and one of the most emotionally complex ninja of the village, Anko answered. I doubt even one person in this village knows what goes on in that thick head of his. So you don't know him that well either? Sasuke asked. Nope. Not a thing. And personally, I'd like to keep it that way, she answered truthfully. Kazuki couldn't sit still. He kept moving to fix his clothes or to scratch an itch or to make himself more comfortable. It had been 10 minutes since his sister had been carried home, and he couldn't help but somehow feel responsible for making his sister sick. I had let her go out, I should have told her to stay home. I should have been a better leader. He shouted at himself mentally as he began pacing his room, hands folded behind his back. It's all his fault. I know it is, he muttered to himself. He, of course, was Uzumaki Naruto. Kazuki had known that his sister had been interested in him. Hell, he knew that basically every female that grew up with him had some kind of romantic interest in him. Whether it was the Hyuga heiress, the Haruno Prince, the Yamanaka girl, or his own sister, he had noticed their love for him. He had thought that maybe, like with his own crush on Hanabi, she would outgrow it, but recently he had seen this glazed look in her eyes, as if she were thinking about someone. And earlier, after he had come home from practice, her eyes looked even more glazed, and she seemed skittish. He had known that she was going to see him, even a child could have guessed it. But he did nothing to stop her, did nothing to dissuade her. He desperately wanted to, though. But he didn't because even though he was technically in charge of the Sadaki household, he was neither his sister's older brother nor her father, and he didn't want to be. After all, he was 7 years younger than she was and still had a lot more growing to do. And now look what's happened. She's unconscious with a high fever. He yelled at himself. He knew what he had to do, and by no means did he want to do it. He would have to take action as head of the Sadaki clan to make sure that his sister remained safe. He would have to tell her how to live her life, and he knew she would detest him for it. But as long as I know that it'll help her in the long run, it's all right, right? He asked to no one in particular. He received no answer. He took in a deep breath and left his dark empty room to check up on his sister. He tentatively descended the steps from the upper level to the lower, where his mother was caring after his sister. Okawa-san, how is Tenten doing? He called out into the darkness that seemed to envelop the house. Again, he received no answer. But to him, the silence was louder than any sound could be. Something's wrong, he thought, his mind descending into a state of panic. He began to run down the steps and then through the section of the house that served as the weapon shop. The slapping of his feet on the floorboards were the only sounds in the house. He threw open the back door that led into more of the Sadaki's actual living place and feverishly looked around for his older sister and mother, both of whom were nowhere to be found. Okawa-san, Tenten, Kazuki called, panic clear in his voice. Still, no one answered his calls. Where are you? He asked himself. He then saw the bathroom door to his left open, and he had found his answer. Tenten, you're all right, he proclaimed ecstatically. I was so afraid. You were unconscious and you had such a high fever, I thought. Kazuki, his sister interjected harshly as she stepped out of the bathroom and closed the door behind her, clad in a loose-fitting t-shirt and loose, baggy pants. Yes, Tenten, Kazuki asked, confused. He didn't have the faintest idea of why she would act so irritated. After all, he had done nothing but wish for her well-being and had done the little he could to help his sister. Who do you think you are? She indignantly asked, her eyes cold as ice. Kazuki blinked his eyes in surprise. He had not expected anything pleasant by the sound of his sister's voice, but this was far beyond what he had expected. What do you mean, Ainui? Kazuki innocently asked, shifting his weight from one foot to another. Tell me, Ototo, do you think you're important enough to call others unwanted? To tell them that they won't be missed when they're gone? Tell me, Kazuki, are you truly so cold-hearted as to tell a boy younger than you to crawl into a cave and die? What happened to the kind-hearted boy I grew up with, the one who would tell his Ainui that he loved her and would never do anything to hurt her? Tenten demanded angrily, her eyes never once blinking or losing contact with Kazuki's own. I was only doing what was best for, began Kazuki defensively but was stopped by a sharp pain erupting on the side of his face. Don't you dare tell me that inflicting so much pain on someone who was already scarred was for the best. Do you know how much pain Sasuke's been through in his life? You had a father when you were 6 years old. Do you know what he had told me when I was training him today? He told me that when he was younger he lived on the streets with no money, no family, and no support. I've put up with a lot from you, Kazuki, whether it was your disdain towards my liking of Naruto, dating Lee, or proposing to Neji, but now I draw the line, she coldly admonished. To put it plainly, Kazuki was stupefied. Never before had his sister hit him, and it felt so bad to him. It felt worse than any detention he had ever gotten or any test he failed. It was as if he failed one of the people he loved the most. But his confusion quickly grew into anger. If you love him so much, then why aren't you out with him right now? Shouldn't you be out having some kind of romantic date or adrenaline pumping moment? If you love him so much, then go and live with him, why don't you? Oh, that's right, his apartment's fucking destroyed. And how do you know he even loves you? Maybe he'll just use you and then throw you away like an unwanted toy. Have you thought of that, Nui? Exploded Kazuki, his heart pounding and his breaths coming quickly. How do you know about his apartment being destroyed? I never told you about that, Tenten asked. Kazuki's eyes widened as he realized that she hadn't told him. Tenten, I swear I didn't. Kazuki began to protest, but already knew by the look in his sister's eyes that no matter what he said, she would not believe him. Kazuki only lowered his head in shame, for he knew that no matter however many excuses he gave, or how much evidence he showed, he would be guilty. Guilty for a crime that he did not do, but rather had hired someone to do it for him. Naruto, she called tentatively to the man. However, he did not hear her, or if he did, he decided not to acknowledge her. She was almost moved to physical sickness at the sight in front of her. She had only seen Naruto cry on 2 occasions, the Sandame's funeral and at Lee's funeral. But on both of those times there were other people crying along with him, including her. And now, he was the only one that was crying and Sakura was the only one there to comfort him. And it wasn't just that he was crying, he was full out sobbing on his hands and knees. She thought back to all of the times that she would cry and her mother would comfort her. And then she thought of Sasuke's funeral, and when she was like this, it was Neji who got her to calm down. And not with kind, sympathetic words or hugs and kisses either, he had merely placed a hand onto her shoulder and offered her a hand to get up. Maybe it'll help him, like it helped me, she thought as she walked closer to her teammate. She then slowly placed her hand on Naruto's shoulder from behind, keeping a grip that was not too firm, but not too lax either. Naruto, Sakura murmured as his body went completely rigid at her touch. You'll catch a cold if you stay out here too long, she advised. She could feel the cold rain fall onto her and slip down her shirt, sending shivers running throughout her body. Don't touch me, Naruto commanded, his voice wavering between several emotions she couldn't discern. Sakura frowned at his comment. He had never once in the past spoken to her like Sasuke before, but just then he had sounded just like the sole survivor of the massacre of the Uchiha clan. Why shouldn't I, Naruto? Tell me why I shouldn't touch you, Sakura told him, keeping her voice in a low, calm tone. Naruto then began to get up, and Sakura released her grip on his shoulder. Soon the two faced each other, both of them soaked to the bone. Because I kill people, Sakura, Naruto answered, facing Sakura head on. She recognized this look. It was his determined look, the one that said that no matter what you said, he wouldn't listen. I kill people for a living. Out of all the jobs in the world I chose to do this, to fulfill the role of God. To decide who deserves to live and who deserves to die, he informed. Have you ever killed a person, Sakura? Sakura merely shook her head in the negative, trying to keep her emotions in check. Then you wouldn't know how horrible it feels to know that it's your fault that someone can't go back to their home, that their spouse and kids won't see them again, that their family and friends will cry and sob for them. It sickens you to feel their blood on your own hands, that you voluntarily took another's life for the good of the village. There's only one feeling worse than killing, Sakura, and that's killing someone you love, Naruto explained, all of his emotions spilling out in jumbled heaps, anger, sadness, disappointment, pity, excitement, all of them finally coming out. Naruto visibly stiffened as Sakura embraced him, pressing her clean body against his filthy, muddy one. Naruto, why do you keep this to yourself? You have so many people close to you, yet you keep these feelings buried in your thoughts. You don't have to be so alone, you know. Nobody should have to suffer alone, because, in reality, we're all suffering. Maybe not by the same things, but we all are pained by cuts and bruises, scars. So please, let me help you just this once. Let me repay you for everything you've done for me, and repent for all that I've done to you, Sakura pleaded. Let me suffer with you, then, maybe, we can focus on what's really worth protecting and worth killing for. Naruto then returned Sakura's embrace, the rain the only sound in the air for several minutes as they stood there like figures frozen in time. Alright, Sakura, I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything. Where do you want me to begin? Naruto conceded, releasing Sakura, a blush on his face. She then followed suit. At the beginning, Naruto, tell me from the beginning, Sakura requested. But we should go indoors first, or we'll both get sick. We could go to my place. But your mother, Naruto began to object. However, he was silenced by a finger being pressed to his lips. My mother knows you well enough, and anyway, you could probably fit in my dad's old clothes, retorted Sakura. Naruto knew not to press the matter farther, for the subject of her father was still a delicate matter. Alright, Naruto said, let's go then, but, could you do me a favor, Sakura? What is it? Tenten's mother was looking after someone for me, and I don't want to intrude on her any longer. Could I? Naruto requested. How about this? You go to your house and change into some clean clothes, and I'll go pick up Sasuke for you, Sakura offered as they walked away from the memorial stone. How did you know what his name was? Naruto asked, amazed at her knowledge. Intuition, Naruto, that's all. He stood, memorized, in front of the large house, the one he lived off of for a year or so while he lived in the village of Konoha. For some reason, Sasuke couldn't bring himself to walk away from it. For an unknown reason it held his consciousness within its grounds, and would refuse Sasuke's internal pleas to leave. It sucks what happened, don't you think? Asked a voice from behind him. Sasuke jumped at the sudden sound and turned around to face with a woman wearing a white shirt that hugged her body, long, tight beige pants that were slit from the thigh up, revealing dense fishnet stockings, and a long, tan overcoat that seemed to envelop the entirety of her body and cloud it with the mystery of what lay beneath the woman's guarded appearance. What do you mean? What happened? Questioned Sasuke. But even as he began to converse with this woman, there was a voice inside of his head screaming at him to just run and leave this horrible place in the dust. For the love of Kami-sama, kid, what the fuck have they been teaching you in school? She disgustedly asked. Sasuke hung his head sheepishly. I haven't started school yet, he explained. The woman only ground the heel of her palm into her forehead in frustration. Alright, well, this was, the compound of the Uchiha clan, the woman began to explain. You do know about them, right? Sasuke only gave her a blank look in return, which only frustrated her more. Well, they were one of the most prominent, and screwed up, clans. And 11 years ago, the entire clan was wiped out except for 2 people. Why? Sasuke interrupted. I was getting to that, she irritably explained. The first person survived because he himself was the one to kill his clan, and the other to survive was his younger brother, who watched his parents murdered before his very eyes. And so he was pretty messed up for the rest of his life, she remarked reminiscently, a faint smile on her face. I've got to admit, he was talented, for a spoiled brat, that is. So, he's dead now? Sasuke asked. The woman sighed in exasperation. Of course he's dead. The woman snapped. Do feel sorry for him, the younger brother? Sasuke asked, preparing himself for some kind of stark retort. No, I could never feel sorry for scum like him. Uchiha Sasuke could rot in hell for all I care, she spat. It's that blonde idiot who killed him who I feel sorry for. His own best friend, the Uchiha, left him out to die, and now, years later, that same person was killed by his own hands. He must be an emotional wreck, she explained solemnly as she looked upon the mansion which appeared haunted in the distorted moonlight. Uchiha, Sasuke. Sasuke asked himself. Is that the same man Naruto 2-san was talking about? His teammate, the person I look like? I don't know why I'm telling you all this though. You were bound to learn some watered down, kid-friendly version in school, she admitted. Why do you talk of Naruto 2? Naruto-san like that though? Sasuke questioned. He doesn't seem like an idiot. He's really nice, and kind. So you know him, Anko stated rather than asked. But you never knew him when he was your age, she claimed reminiscently. When he was a genin he was a loud-mouthed, impotent, cocky, stubborn, little pain in the ass. But he had his good points, she said as she tilted her head back up towards the sky, not seeming to mind the raindrops that seemed to assail her. Kunoichi-san? Asked Sasuke, trying to get the woman's attention, who seemed to have gone into a type of trance. What is it? Snapped the woman flatly without looking back at the boy. Sasuke flinched at the harshness in her voice. I was just wondering, how do you know Naruto-san? It's just, you spoke as if you knew him well, Sasuke mumbled, averting eye contact with the woman. It's none of your business, Gaki, retorted Anko. Why do you care anyway? How old are you? 6, 7. Even if you did know him, anything you knew would be a lie. What do you mean? Sasuke asked, a primordial fear starting to grow in the pit of his stomach. What I mean is that Uzumaki Naruto has a notorious reputation in this village, Anko stated. What kind of reputation? Sasuke inquired, curious. He has a reputation of being the #1 most unpredictable and one of the most emotionally complex ninja of the village, Anko answered. I doubt even one person in this village knows what goes on in that thick head of his. So you don't know him that well either? Sasuke asked. Nope. Not a thing. And personally, I'd like to keep it that way, she answered truthfully. Kazuki couldn't sit still. He kept moving to fix his clothes or to scratch an itch or to make himself more comfortable. It had been 10 minutes since his sister had been carried home, and he couldn't help but somehow feel responsible for making his sister sick. I had let her go out, I should have told her to stay home. I should have been a better leader. He shouted at himself mentally as he began pacing his room, hands folded behind his back. It's all his fault. I know it is, he muttered to himself. He, of course, was Uzumaki Naruto. Kazuki had known that his sister had been interested in him. Hell, he knew that basically every female that grew up with him had some kind of romantic interest in him. Whether it was the Hyuga heiress, the Haruno Prince, the Yamanaka girl, or his own sister, he had noticed their love for him. He had thought that maybe, like with his own crush on Hanabi, she would outgrow it, but recently he had seen this glazed look in her eyes, as if she were thinking about someone. And earlier, after he had come home from practice, her eyes looked even more glazed, and she seemed skittish. He had known that she was going to see him, even a child could have guessed it. But he did nothing to stop her, did nothing to dissuade her. He desperately wanted to, though. But he didn't because even though he was technically in charge of the Sadaki household, he was neither his sister's older brother nor her father, and he didn't want to be. After all, he was 7 years younger than she was and still had a lot more growing to do. And now look what's happened. She's unconscious with a high fever. He yelled at himself. He knew what he had to do, and by no means did he want to do it. He would have to take action as head of the Sadaki clan to make sure that his sister remained safe. He would have to tell her how to live her life, and he knew she would detest him for it. But as long as I know that it'll help her in the long run, it's all right, right? He asked to no one in particular. He received no answer. He took in a deep breath and left his dark empty room to check up on his sister. He tentatively descended the steps from the upper level to the lower, where his mother was caring after his sister. Okawa-san, how is Tenten doing? He called out into the darkness that seemed to envelop the house. Again, he received no answer. But to him, the silence was louder than any sound could be. Something's wrong, he thought, his mind descending into a state of panic. He began to run down the steps and then through the section of the house that served as the weapon shop. The slapping of his feet on the floorboards were the only sounds in the house. He threw open the back door that led into more of the Sadaki's actual living place and feverishly looked around for his older sister and mother, both of whom were nowhere to be found. Okaa-san, Tenten, Kazuki called, panic clear in his voice. Still, no one answered his calls. Where are you? He asked himself. He then saw the bathroom door to his left open, and he had found his answer. Tenten, you're all right, he proclaimed ecstatically. I was so afraid. You were unconscious and you had such a high fever, I thought. Kazuki, his sister interjected harshly as she stepped out of the bathroom and closed the door behind her, clad in a loose-fitting t-shirt and loose, baggy pants. Yes, Tenten, Kazuki asked, confused. He didn't have the faintest idea of why she would act so irritated. After all, he had done nothing but wish for her well-being and had done the little he could to help his sister. Who do you think you are? She indignantly asked, her eyes cold as ice. Kazuki blinked his eyes in surprise. He had not expected anything pleasant by the sound of his sister's voice, but this was far beyond what he had expected. What do you mean, Ainui? Kazuki innocently asked, shifting his weight from one foot to another. Tell me, Ototo, do you think you're important enough to call others unwanted? To tell them that they won't be missed when they're gone? Tell me, Kazuki, are you truly so cold-hearted as to tell a boy younger than you to crawl into a cave and die? What happened to the kind-hearted boy I grew up with, the one who would tell his Ainui that he loved her and would never do anything to hurt her? Tenten demanded angrily, her eyes never once blinking or losing contact with Kazuki's own. I was only doing what was best for, began Kazuki defensively but was stopped by a sharp pain erupting on the side of his face. Don't you dare tell me that inflicting so much pain on someone who was already scarred was for the best. Do you know how much pain Sasuke's been through in his life? You had a father when you were 6 years old. Do you know what he had told me when I was training him today? He told me that when he was younger he lived on the streets with no money, no family, and no support. I've put up with a lot from you, Kazuki, whether it was your disdain towards my liking of Naruto, dating Lee, or proposing to Neji, but now I draw the line, she coldly admonished. To put it plainly, Kazuki was stupefied. Never before had his sister hit him, and it felt so bad to him. It felt worse than any detention he had ever gotten or any test he failed. It was as if he failed one of the people he loved the most. But his confusion quickly grew into anger. If you love him so much, then why aren't you out with him right now? Shouldn't you be out having some kind of romantic date or adrenaline-pumping moment? If you love him so much, then go and live with him, why don't you? Oh, that's right, his apartment's fucking destroyed. And how do you know he even loves you? Maybe he'll just use you and then throw you away like an unwanted toy. Have you thought of that, Ainui? Exploded Kazuki, his heart pounding and his breaths coming quickly. How do you know about his apartment being destroyed? I never told you about that, Tenten asked. Kazuki's eyes widened as he realized that she hadn't told him. Tenten, I swear I didn't. Kazuki began to protest, but already knew by the look in his sister's eyes that no matter what he said, she would not believe him. Kazuki only lowered his head in shame, for he knew that no matter however many excuses he gave, or how much evidence he showed, he would be guilty. Guilty for a crime that he did not do, but rather had hired someone to do it for him. Naruto, she called tentatively to the man. However, he did not hear her, or if he did, he decided not to acknowledge her. She was almost moved to physical sickness at the sight in front of her. She had only seen Naruto cry on 2 occasions, the Sandame's funeral and at Lee's funeral. But on both of those times there were other people crying along with him, including her. And now, he was the only one that was crying and Sakura was the only one there to comfort him. And it wasn't just that he was crying, he was full out sobbing on his hands and knees. She thought back to all of the times that she would cry and her mother would comfort her. And then she thought of Sasuke's funeral, And when she was like this, it was Neji who got her to calm down. And not with kind, sympathetic words or hugs and kisses either, he had merely placed a hand onto her shoulder and offered her a hand to get up. Maybe it'll help him, like it helped me, she thought as she walked closer to her teammate. She then slowly placed her hand on Naruto's shoulder from behind, keeping a grip that was not too firm, but not too lax either. Naruto, Sakura murmured as his body went completely rigid at her touch. You'll catch a cold if you stay out here too long, she advised. She could feel the cold rain fall onto her and slip down her shirt, sending shivers running throughout her body. Don't touch me, Naruto commanded, his voice wavering between several emotions she couldn't discern. Sakura frowned at his comment. He had never once in the past spoken to her like Sasuke before, but just then he had sounded just like the sole survivor of the massacre of the Uchiha clan. Why shouldn't I, Naruto? Tell me why I shouldn't touch you, Sakura told him, keeping her voice in a low, calm tone. Naruto then began to get up, and Sakura released her grip on his shoulder. Soon the two faced each other, both of them soaked to the bone. Because I kill people, Sakura, Naruto answered, facing Sakura head on. She recognized this look. It was his determined look, the one that said that no matter what you said, he wouldn't listen. I kill people for a living. Out of all the jobs in the world I chose to do this, to fulfill the role of God. To decide who deserves to live and who deserves to die, he informed. Have you ever killed a person, Sakura? Sakura merely shook her head in the negative, trying to keep her emotions in check. Then you wouldn't know how horrible it feels to know that it's your fault that someone can't go back to their home, that their spouse and kids won't see them again, that their family and friends will cry and sob for them. It sickens you to feel their blood on your own hands, that you voluntarily took another's life for the good of the village. There's only one feeling worse than killing, Sakura, and that's killing someone you love, Naruto explained, all of his emotions spilling out in jumbled heaps, anger, sadness, disappointment, pity, excitement, all of them finally coming out. Naruto visibly stiffened as Sakura embraced him, pressing her clean body against his filthy, muddy one. Naruto, why do you keep this to yourself? You have so many people close to you yet you keep these feelings buried in your thoughts. You don't have to be so alone, you know. Nobody should have to suffer alone, because, in reality, we're all suffering. Maybe not by the same things, but we all are pained by cuts and bruises, scars. So please, let me help you just this once. Let me repay you for everything you've done for me, and repent for all that I've done to you, Sakura pleaded. Let me suffer with you, then, maybe, we can focus on what's really worth protecting and worth killing for. Naruto then returned Sakura's embrace, the rain the only sound in the air for several minutes as they stood there like figures frozen in time. Alright, Sakura, I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything. Where do you want me to begin? Naruto conceded, releasing Sakura, a blush on his face. She then followed suit. At the beginning, Naruto, tell me from the beginning, Sakura requested. But we should go indoors first, or we'll both get sick. We could go to my place. But your mother, Naruto began to object. However, he was silenced by a finger being pressed to his lips. My mother knows you well enough, and anyway, you could probably fit in my dad's old clothes, retorted Sakura. Naruto knew not to press the matter farther, for the subject of her father was still a delicate matter. Alright, Naruto said, let's go then, but, could you do me a favor, Sakura? What is it? Tenten's mother was looking after someone for me, and I don't want to intrude on her any longer. Could I? Naruto requested. How about this? You go to your house and change into some clean clothes, and I'll go pick up Sasuke for you, Sakura offered as they walked away from the memorial stone. How did you know what his name was? Naruto asked, amazed at her knowledge. Intuition, Naruto, that's all. Someone cares, thought Naruto as he opened the pale door to his apartment, pausing for a moment to stare at the door adjacent to him. Shrugging and sliding his shoes off, he made his way towards the bathroom. Soon soaking wet clothes joined others in a hamper clearly not his own. Thankfully Sakura had been kind enough to lend him one of hers. Someone wants to know me, Naruto thought cheerfully as he walked into the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. Water rolled down his toned muscles and his usually unruly blonde hair now matted down to his forehead. Persistent water continued to drip down his lean face, but he managed a small smile before his hands reached down and into the cabinet under the sink for a dry towel. Kit, what are you going to do about her? The demon fox's voice boomed in Naruto's head as he victoriously pulled a towel from the drawer and began drying himself off. He decided not to focus on the QB and instead focus on making sure that he was dry, making sure the only thoughts in his head were of the woven fabric he rubbed firmly against his body. Don't ignore me, Kit. You're going to have to face this problem eventually, he demanded, causing Naruto to grimace. I know, Naruto said aloud, heaving a frustrated sigh as he once again looked at himself in the mirror. I'm just not ready to face her yet. I'm not strong enough, he confessed to the fox, lowering his eyes in shame. Stop feeding yourself that crap. If you're strong enough to take another's life, then you're strong enough to fix your own mistakes. And anyway, didn't you want to give her something? Admonished the demon fox. Naruto, however, kept on trying to ignore him as he once again brushed the tough fabric against his wet skin. This time, however, the QB did not say anything, only shaking his head at his vessel's stubbornness. Soon after, Naruto exited the bathroom, mentally prepping himself for the conversation he was about to have with his childhood crush. What do I say? Where should I start? Naruto asked himself as he walked into his room and frowned as he scanned over the room, which was pretty much destroyed. All of his furniture had been destroyed by fire, leaving him ash and charred wood as compensation. The walls, now singed wooden planks that had been hidden by wallpaper depicting steaming bowls of ramen of all flavors, were now exposed. Many areas of the wall were bare of any wallpaper, the many layers partially or totally burned through. There was only one place unfettered by the arsonists. Naruto's secret closet, which he had taken meticulous care to conceal in case anything like this should happen. He was used to hiding his most precious possessions, for often as a child his apartment would be ransacked, burned, or vandalized, however with less and less frequency over the years as Naruto matured and began to prove his worth to the village hidden in the leaves. And not once had anyone ever discovered his secret closet, much to his joy. You tell her what she wants to hear, she wants the truth, you give her the truth, the fox answered as Naruto walked over to the middle of his room, took a piece of chalk out of his pocket, and began drawing glyphs on one of the boards. Kai, Naruto whispered as he made a single hand sign over the glyph, which began to glow and then disappeared without a trace, as if it were never there in the first place. In its place, however, was a brass key. I don't know, I've never, told anyone the whole truth before and, to be honest, I don't want to tell anyone, he confessed as he picked up the key and walked back into the entrance room and walked towards where his couch used to be. Now, it was only a burnt mass that only vaguely resembled a couch and merely took up space. That was all right for him though, he didn't mind that it was useless. He just didn't want his apartment to be empty. Emptiness for him meant death and a lack of hope, both of which he tried to completely get rid of. He then drew another glyph on the wall behind the scorched couch and made the same hand sign, the ram. Kai, he muttered as a small section of the wall collapsed into itself, forming a keyhole just the right size for the brass key. Naruto then inserted the key into the hole and twisted, causing part of the wall to fall onto the ground next to him, creating a loud thumping sound. I'll never understand you humans, the QB grumbled. You say you want love, yet when push comes to shove, you back out and blame it on something else. His complaints fell on deaf ears, however, as Naruto walked into the opening that was revealed when the section of wall fell. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he muttered as a single shadow clone appeared next to Naruto, yawning and stretching, clad only in a tight pair of boxer shorts. What is it? I'm sleepy, the clone grumbled before yawning again. Naruto glared at the embarrassing clone, which aptly began to take Naruto seriously. Answer the door if anyone comes, and henge yourself into some clothes, Naruto commanded before he disappeared into the dark room that had been spared by the vandals. He could have sworn he heard the clone mutter something about being overworked, but dismissed it as his imagination as he looked over all of the things that he stored within the hidden walk-in closet. It was a moderate-sized closet, about 1.5 meters tall, 2 meters wide, and 3 meters from the entrance to the opposite wall, which was a plain white, just like the other walls in the ceiling. To anyone else, this may have been a simple walk-in closet, maybe to store old clothes and some meaningless figurines and paperwork, but for Naruto, it held his childhood. On the ground lay his very first kunai, given to him as a birthday present from the Sandaime Hokage when he was 7. He had used it every single day he attended the academy, and because of it there were oil marks left on the old, worn-out tape wrapped around the handle and the blade was nicked and scratched in so many places. The obsidian metal looked so fragile that even the slightest touch might have destroyed it. Next to it lay a small box, and within it lay a Hiraishin kunai, which had been given to him by Jiraiya on the day before returning from their year-and-a-half training trip. This was the Yondaime's, Jiraiya had told him as he held the prong kunai out towards Naruto, who was practically jumping up and down out of anxiousness. It was used for his signature jutsu, the Hiraishin, and is probably the last of its kind. You, Naruto, as my final student, have proven yourself to me. In fact, you have exceeded every single expectation I had of you. I would like to say that you are my legacy, but I would be lying. Because in every way, you are Yondaime's legacy, Naruto. Make sure that you don't dishonor his name, Jiraiya narrated, a solemn look on his face as he did so. But then, after, he cracked a small grin. Congratulations, Naruto, you've officially proven yourself to me as a true ninja. Naruto had literally tackled him in his gratitude, tears rolling down his face as he thanked the Sannin over and over again while Jiraiya just laughed. It was the last time Jiraiya had been in contact with Naruto over the past 4 years. And from a cylindrical bar built into the two side walls hung 3 different outfits. One of them was the orange and blue jumpsuit with the white collar that Naruto had worn every single day for 5 years straight, from when he was 9 to when he was 14. The fabric was almost entirely worn out and had ripped in a multitude of places, making it appear ragged and overused, both of which were completely true. And tied around the collar was the pair of green goggles he had worn throughout most of his childhood. The second outfit was the black and orange tracksuit he had begun to wear during his training journey, when he had finally grown out of his orange and blue one during his training journey with Jiraiya. Unlike its counterpart, however, this one was still in usable condition. The only reason he had stopped wearing it was because of the fact that, for once, he had been able to choose which clothes he wanted to wear due to the increased payoff of being in ranked missions. And then there was the third outfit, or rather, article of clothing. The birthday present that had mysteriously appeared in his apartment. It was the day he turned 18 and he had just completed an A- ranked mission when he stumbled into his apartment, his clothes blood-smeared and his vitality steadily decreasing. The second he entered his apartment he knew that someone had been in it. The glass he had left on the sink counter had been moved and, of course, there was a jacket cover case laid out on his couch. Naruto trudged over to the suitcase and examined it. He had discovered only one thing, however, a note taped to the case. On it were written the words, "To Naruto. Today is your first step into manhood. Make sure you don't screw it up." Naruto, albeit exhausted, opened the case, his curiosity getting the better of him. After examining its contents, he immediately left to go take a shower and sleep, thinking that it was just a trick of the mind. But still, when he returned it was there, the infamous trademark of Kazama Arashi, the silk cloak that had embroidered flames licking the purgatory of white that seemed to envelop the fabric. Immediately he put it back in the case and hung it up in the closet and had left it in there ever since, lest he ruin it in same way. But now, as he stood among the physical manifestations of his past, he felt a new sense of invigoration for the future. He unhooked the tracksuit from the clothes hanger it hung from and slipped it onto him, like a second skin. Instantly he felt the insulation that the suit provided, warming his shivering body with its fabric and with memories that seemed to be an eternity old. Something didn't feel quite right to him though, something was missing, and Naruto knew exactly what it was. However, he did not feel quite ready for it, that he himself was not worthy. Several minutes later, Naruto exited the apartment with a determined grin on his face, the orange and black tracksuit stretching over his skin to fit his body, which had grown since the last time he had worn it. As he walked proudly out of the complex and towards the house of one Haruno Sakura, he felt nervous, and in a strange way, happy. The rain had let up mostly, and the moon's light shone down upon the wet streets of Konoha through the smoky veils of the clouds. Datbeo, Naruto whispered to himself, a secret mantra from his childhood that had lain forgotten inside of him, until now, when he needed the special word that always seemed to bring up his spirits. And right now, that's exactly what he needed. Sakura was not one to act on impulse, quite the opposite actually. She usually planned out her words very carefully in her mind and only spoke the ones that would benefit her in some way. She hardly ever regretted the decisions she made. But now, as she walked towards Tenten's house, she began to rethink her words to Naruto. Am I truly ready? She thought herself as she clasped her hands together. Am I really prepared to be shown all of the feelings he's repressed for so long? I mean, what if I begin to pity him? I mean, I already do in a way. Just thinking about what kind of trauma he must have gone through gives me the chills, she reflected as her pace slowly came to a halt, a realization suddenly dawning on her. Why is Tenten's mother of all people looking after Sasuke? She asked herself. I mean, he could have asked any of us to do it, yet he chooses one of our mothers. Something's not right. Sakura thought as she looked up towards the sky, looking for an answer in its vastness. Do you mean that she loves me? Can you tell me all you know about Naruto-san? Does that mean that she loves me? Everything from the past 2 days began whirring around in Sakura's head, trying to finish an unsolved puzzle in her head. But no matter what she tried to make of it, she could not figure out why Sasuke was with Tenten's mom, nor why Naruto was such a mess. Unless, Sakura thought as she began walking again. What if Naruto's fear came true? What if she doesn't love him? But then, no, she's not shallow, furball wouldn't be the reason. Damn it, she yelled as she balled her hands into fists and barely restrained herself from hitting something. Why the hell are you so difficult to figure out, idiot? She shouted at no one in particular. However, unluckily for her, she didn't notice the person standing behind her. Sakura-san, a timid voice asked behind her. Sakura turned around, slightly blushing at someone hearing her unflattering outburst, and rushed over to the young drenched boy standing in front of her. Sasuke-kun, why are you out here? Sakura demanded as she approached the boy. I'm just going for a walk, Sasuke mumbled as he waited for Sakura to approach him. Sakura quirked an eyebrow at his response quizzically as Sasuke averted her gaze. There's something he's not telling me, Sakura thought. But then again, it's neither my right nor my responsibility. So I take it that you're going to go home now? Sakura asked. Yeah, home, Sasuke answered detachedly, staring off into space. Sakura-san, you can cure people, right? Sasuke inquired, still not meeting Sakura's gaze. Oh shit. That really doesn't sound good, Sakura thought as she sighed. Yes, why? She tentatively asked. Because, Tenten, Sasuke stammered as he finally began to meet the older ninja's gaze. What about her? Sakura frantically asked, knowing that whatever Sasuke was trying to say wasn't going to be good news. I found her out cold in the street, he quickly said. Really? I don't know what happened. She was just there. I only brought her back to her house. I swear Sakura-san, I swear. Sasuke added quickly, stumbling over some of his words. The change in Sakura's entire body shifted instantly, from worried and anxious to calm and serious. Sasuke, I need you to do something for me, Sakura demanded as she looked down at the boy, somewhat frightened at the woman's sudden attitude change. What? He asked, looking up into Sakura's eyes fearfully. Go home. Run as fast as you can. If you see Naruto, tell him that I'll have to postpone our meeting due to urgent business, Sakura instructed. Oh god, I hope Tenten's alright, hopefully it's nothing more than a fever or fatigue, Sakura thought worriedly. Even though externally she seemed calm and composed, internally she was panicking and frantically hoping that her friend was alright. Alright, Sakura-san, Sasuke complied. Immediately he turned around and began sprinting through the wet streets to where he believed Naruto's apartment was located. Sakura immediately began running towards Tenten's house, left with more questions than answers. Why would she let herself just collapse in the street? She's not as thick-headed as some people I know, something is definitely not right here. The two sat across each other, both of them locked in a battle of silence. One allowed his eyes to wander around the room, making sure that they never crossed the paths of his sister, while she couldn't tear her eyes away from her brother. The silence that had overtaken the two was then broken by a loud knocking on the front door. I'll get it, Kazuki offered, eager to escape the awkward silence he had previously been trapped in. Sorry, Tenten, I only want what's best for you. And you're above scum like him, he thought as he ran to the front door. Who are you? He rudely asked, openly glaring at the woman standing in the doorway. If you're looking my sister, she's not feeling good, so go away, he said. A second later he was sprawled out on the ground, rubbing his head. Don't get in my way while I'm on business, brat, Sakura growled at the younger boy as she walked past him, causing him to cower away from her in fear. Kazuki, who is it? Tenten called as she walked into the weapon shop, which also served as the entrance to their house. Ah, Sakura-chan, it's good to see you here. What brings you here at this time though? Tenten asked joyfully, a smile on her face. Sasuke-kun sent me, Sakura answered curtly. Now go back inside. You're sick with something, Sakura instructed, not failing to notice how Tenten's eyes widened at the mention of the young boy. Sakura-chan, really, I'm fine, it was only a passing fever, Tenten affirmed. You really don't have to stay here. Alright then, Tenten-chan, if you say you're alright, but I'm not leaving. I need to speak with you, Sakura answered, her determination unwavering. About what, Sakura-chan? Tenten asked her friend, but she could see in the pink-haired Kunoichi's eyes what she needed to speak about. Naruto, Sakura answered calmly. Come in then, Tenten relented, sighing. She then turned to look at her brother. Kazuki, go prepare some tea for our guest, she stoically ordered. But, Tenten, he began to protest, but was silenced by a glare that could kill from his sister. Why yeah, sure, he stammered as he scampered onto his feet and ran back into the living compartment of their house to prepare tea. Women are scary, he muttered to himself as he began to boil some water in a kettle. Okay, what's up with you and Naruto? Sakura asked brusquely as she sat at a table across from Tenten. Nothing, Sakura-chan, what would give you that idea? Tenten answered. She was lying through her teeth. She knew it, Sakura knew it, and Tenten knew that Sakura knew that she knew it. Don't play dumb with me, please, Sakura lightly pleaded. I just wanted to help, she added. Your help isn't wanted, nor is it needed, Tenten coldly responded, causing Sakura to blink several times. Is this that same girl I grew up with? Sakura asked herself. She never spoke like this before. I'm sorry. I just wanted to help him, that's all. I still remember how happy he used to be and how excited he used to act when we were younger. And now he's not like before, he's more distant from us and less happy. I mean, in light of the recent events I can understand, but there's something else, I just know it. I may have been useless and inconsiderate towards him when I was younger, but it doesn't mean that I didn't learn anything. And one of the main things I learned about him was that he acts as if all of the hatred, all the pain, all the suffering that he bears means nothing to him. But now he's like a stranger to me. I don't know this new brooding, unhappy Naruto, he's a stranger to me. And I just want to bring back the old Naruto who would smile and laugh and just make me feel good. So please, Tenten-chan, won't you help me? Sakura pleaded passionately, balling her hands into fists tightly in her lap. No, Tenten flatly answered. I'm sorry, Sakura-chan. I can't help you, she added sympathetically as she met her friend's sorrowful gaze. But I don't understand, Sakura objected pitifully. And that's why I can't help you nor allow you to help me, Sakura-chan. You just don't understand, Tenten answered. You would never be able to understand what it feels like to be someone like Naruto or myself. You wouldn't be able to understand the amount of pain we have to put ourselves through just to feel accepted in society. You could never understand, Tenten began to lecture, listing why Sakura could not help her. But, before she could finish, she was interjected by a loud bang on the table that was placed in between them. Sakura's teeth ground together as her fist lay unmoving from the table, which was still intact after the blow. Damn it, she shouted as she rose to her feet, finally giving in to her emotions. Who the hell are you to say that I don't understand? You don't understand, you can't understand, you'll never understand, I'm sick of it all. I'm sick of not understanding. I'm sick of being treated like a goddamn princess. The only reason I don't understand is because you won't let me try. You immediately write me off as some prissy air-headed princess that's detached from the world and all of the pain that's in it. You're wrong. I hurt too. I feel pain when I'm cut and I feel empty when I lose a loved one. Just because I was raised in a somewhat standard family environment doesn't mean that I'm oblivious to the pain of others. She then stopped for a second to catch her breath, and when she continued, her voice was a ragged whisper. I can see that Naruto hurts inside, I can see that he's dying. And all of these years have been nothing but a royal pain in the ass for him. I'm not happy about it, but I know it is the truth. And so now, when I finally come to the realization that maybe, just maybe, I can help him, I'm turned away because I don't understand. Where is the logic in that, especially since the person denying me is someone who has no idea what they're talking about? As she spoke, her tone progressively got louder and more accusatory, to the point where she was again yelling at her companion. Except this time, her anger and vehemence resonated within every word. The desperation and pleading that was in her previous monologues completely vanished. How can you even think about comparing yourself to Naruto? Especially after finding out about that hell-spawn fox that's made Naruto's life a living hell, how can you say that your problems are parallel to his? Sure, maybe you feel left out once in a while, or maybe you feel that you aren't accepted by society, but you have no idea if you truly think that you're anything like him. Maybe you would know if you were his classmate, but being that year older hasn't shown you the true hardships he had to deal with when he was younger. Everyone hated him and no one loved him. Sure, maybe you do know that, but did you know that every day after school in the academy the other students beat him up for no reason and then just left him wherever they had done the deed? Most of the times bleeding and unconscious. Did you know that he'd sit on that stupid swing in the academy playground all day, just wasting away his childhood while others played and enjoyed their childhoods? Once again, she paused to catch a breath. When she continued, she spoke in a threatening tone, her voice barely audible. You have no right to compare your troubles with his, Tenten-chan. No matter how hard you may think you've had it, he's had it harder by at least 100-fold. So before you chastise me for trying to understand the person who I wish to help, think about how much you understand, Sakura rebuked, a flood of emotions pouring out of her. She then shakily got up from the chair and began to walk away. I'm sorry for intruding, she apologized without looking back. The pink-haired kunoichi then walked quickly out of the building so that neither of the two would see her trembling or the moisture in her eyes. I want to help you, Naruto. Really, I do, but it seems as if fate won't have it, Sakura thought as she walked towards her own home, where almost certainly all of the lights would be out and her mother would be fast asleep. But there she would be able to find peace and solace, just what her troubled mind needed. I need to go to sleep, she thought wearily as she trudged into the dark household of her family and then into her room, where her mind and body separated seconds after she fell onto her bed. He stood outside of her door, his closed fist raised up to the door, about to knock. Would it be all right, after what happened? Would she slam the door in my face, or would she let me in? He asked himself as he could feel the adrenaline rush throughout his entire body. Just knock on the damn door. How hard could it possibly be? The QB grumbled to himself as he watched Naruto uninterestedly. Shut up. It's harder than you think, Naruto mentally snapped as he drew in a shaky breath and drew back his hand to knock. Here it goes, he muttered to himself as he was about to knock on the door, but as he was about to, it suddenly swung inwards, revealing none other than one of his students. Oh, it's you, Kazuki nonchalantly stated as he glared at his sensei. What do you want? WHWH, what are you doing here? Demanded Naruto as he pointed a finger accusingly at the genin. I live here, Baka-sensei, Kazuki answered. At this, Naruto's eyes widened in shock. He knew that this was Tenten's house. After all, he had just been here just a few hours ago. How could he live here? Unless, he's her brother. Naruto formulated as he looked at his student. If you're looking for Mae Nui, she has company over, he stated. Very rude company, he added spitefully. It was at that moment that there was a loud banging sound as the voices in a different room escalated. I suggest that you leave, Baka-sensei, Kazuki suggested with a yawn. Mae Nui will be up for any more intrusions tonight, she's still recovering from an illness, he explained. Oh, and your clothing's very ugly and makes you look fat, he added as an afterthought before slamming the door in the man's face. Did that little bastard just slam the door in your face? The QB asked, awestruck by the boy's nerve. Yeah, he did, Naruto responded in amazement. You're going to work his ass into the ground tomorrow? He asked, sadistically grinning. Yup, Naruto answered without moving from the doorway. So Tenten's Ototo is that ungrateful little brat, he muttered. And you thought that life couldn't get any harder, the demon fox scoffed, a lupine grin on his face. Naruto just sighed as he walked away from the door. Well, if what Sasuke-kun and Kazuki Bozu said were true, then I guess she really would be too exhausted to have to deal with me, Naruto somberly thought as he dragged his feet along the street. It's too late to be thinking of such troublesome matters, Naruto said wearily as he neared his apartment complex. When he opened the door to his apartment, he was relieved to find nothing but darkness in the apartment. As he walked into his room, he found Sasuke sprawled out on the floor, his head rested on his arms. Naruto smiled gently as he laid a blanket over him and then undressed, once again clad only in his undergarments. I definitely have to go buy more clothes tomorrow, Naruto thought to himself as he lay down in his bed, staring at the dark ceiling above him. At least tomorrow I'll have a clear head, Naruto thought to himself. Kazuki sighed as he brought in a tray with 2 cups of tea, only to find that Sakura had left and that his sister was staring off into space. Tea? He asked tiredly as he set the tray down. Don't listen to what that pink-haired bitch said, Oni-chan. You have every right to compare your troubles with whoever you feel, Kazuki consoled as he took a sip from one of the teacups, relishing the rush of warmness that flooded throughout his body. Thanks, Tenten muttered as she took one of the cups and looked into the steaming hot liquid that it held. Why is she so concerned about those two? They haven't done anything to help her, only hurt her. I can't stand people like them, he maliciously thought as he looked over his sister. Okawa-san will be worried if you don't get a good night's rest, Kazuki finally said after several minutes of silence. After all, don't you have a mission tomorrow? Yeah, Tenten agreed with a deep sigh. Today was just too tiring, that's all, she added with a sad smile. Why don't you go to bed? I'll clean up, Kazuki offered as he quickly drained the small cup. When I get back, you and I are having a long talk, she warned as she mimicked her brother. About what? Kazuki asked, merely wishing to appease his sister. In truth, he was so exhausted he could have fallen asleep on his feet. Everything, she answered as she got up from her seat and began walking towards her room. Good night, Kazuki-kun. Good night, Oni-chan. I'll make you proud of me, one way or another, I swear it. The woman stood alone in the dark open field, the shadows of the tall elm trees falling over her as she impatiently waited for her partner to arrive. It's about time, she snapped as a masked man stepped into the training field, walking at a painfully slow rate. How long could it possibly take to acquire an Anbu uniform? It took me longer than I had anticipated to dispose of one, explained the man as he sat down upon a training log. What is the status of Sentinel? He asked in a business-like tone as the woman walked closer towards him. He has made contact with the target, the woman answered while stretching out her arms. He's also developed a fixation on the Uchiha manner, she added offhandedly. That's to be expected, replied the man as he lifted the mask off of his head. After all, isn't memory only data that can be easily warped and replicated? I guess, the woman agreed with a sigh. But it would be in our best interest if the brat doesn't find out his connection to the Uchiha, she added forcefully. And what of the other two? Were they able to be saved? She asked eagerly. At that the man sighed deeply and shook his head. Don't tell me that, the woman groaned as she rubbed her forehead with her knuckles. Orochimaru is dead. His circulatory system was permanently destroyed by the Uchiha's Chidori Nagashi, the man answered as he pushed the set of circular glasses up to his eyes. And the Uchiha brat? The woman asked venomously. What became of him? His status is unknown, confessed the man. How the hell can you not know his status? The woman barked. I give you the chance of a lifetime to escape, I provide you with corpses to dress, and you can't even hold on to a little brat for a few weeks. I'm very sorry, the man apologized. He is stable though, that much is clear. He's out there somewhere, most likely searching for Itachi, the man stated. You still haven't explained to me how you managed to lose him, Yakushi, the woman snapped bitterly. That's besides the point, the only important issue for now is Sentinel. Without him all of our plans fall to bits and we'll both be killed, Kabuto dismissed. Has he activated the curse seal yet? No, not yet, the woman answered. And I doubt that he will, at least for a while anyway. Uzumaki is too protective of his loved one to allow Sentinel to be put into that kind of danger, the woman reported. Well then, I guess we'll just have to take Uzumaki out of the picture, won't we? Kabuto answered, speaking as if the answer was obvious. Soon all of our plans will come to fruition, and